Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the Lakewood City Council study session agenda for this Monday, June 10, 2024 to order. We've got a few items for discussion tonight. The first is the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Strategic Plan Update. And for this, we have our Communications Manager, Bryn Grimley, along with Ephanus Henderson, the President and CEO of Henderworks, Inc. So come on up. Welcome. Is my sound way too echoey out there? A little loud? Am I a little loud? Loud? Not too bad? Okay, good.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Bryn Grimley, Communications Manager for the city, and with me is Ephanus Henderson, who is with Henderworks. And you might recall, we are contracting with him to do the DEIB strategic plan creation. So the purpose of our presentation this night is just to provide the City Council with an update as to the work that we've been doing over the last approximately 9 months. And we'll just kind of run through our slideshow presentation. I wanted to just let you know, one of the slides does have a video on it, but due to some technical difficulties that we're working through, we won't be able to play it this evening. However, I will share the link with you all so you can watch it separately, because we won't watch it this evening. So without further ado, we'll go through the slideshow, which City Clerk, is there a slideshow? Sorry. I'm wondering if it's not.
And while she's just trying to adjust the slideshow, I'd just like to say it's a pleasure to see a lot of you again. We talked, I think it was virtually in Zoom, and you know, the city leadership team has been doing quite an outstanding job of digging into this work, as you'll see. It's very important for leadership to be very involved in this type of work because leadership sets the tone, helps to hold people accountable for results, and really helps to shape people, watch what you as leaders do and as the city leaders do. So I'm really excited about the engagement and involvement of the city department leaders and so forth so far.
In just a second, we'll have the slideshow. So this is gonna be the most anticipated slideshow you have ever seen. I know, right? And it's pretty succinct, you know, you saw it and we're done. Okay, sure. So, yes. I'd be happy to do that too. Do you want to do that, Brianna? Where? No, I'll share them for you. Okay. Okay. Sure. Well, I'll give a little more background. So roughly over the last approximately 9 months or so, we've been meeting with our leadership team. So that's largely composed of the department directors within the city. And we started last year, and we've met pretty frequently, almost every week, for a couple of hours with Ephanus, and he's facilitated our conversation. And you know, and we'll cover this a little bit in the slides, but some of what we started with was a lot of sort of foundational work. So getting us all on the same page, talking through things, working through it. And so, you know, that takes time to get about 12, 13 people around the table, all speaking the same language, if you will, and having the same basic understanding of definitions and kind of setting that roadmap that we want for how we're going to move forward. So that's a lot of what the preliminary work was. And one of the things that I'm sure we'll hear this evening and that we're told almost weekly is go slow to go
slow to
fast. So, I think there may have been some times where it's like, oh my gosh, we're still doing this, but at the same time, it was really important for all of us to make sure we were on the same page with this work. So we'll go forward with the next slide and explain what is DEIB. So this is the video, and I'll send this one out on the link for you all after, but effectively it's just a short, minute and a half, 2-minute video that just kind of walks through a little bit more about the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and why it's important for us to be working on it as an agency. So our goal that we set out with when we were doing this work was to create, a focus internally first. So we are, yes, working on the development of a strategic plan that will guide the organization, but right now we're working internally on that plan. So eventually we'll expand this plan to include sort of the external components. And while we might be focusing internally now, one thing to keep in mind is those internal interactions do have an impact externally. So even though there might be some internal things, that is going to impact how we're operating externally as well. So ultimately, we're trying to put in place a culture that prioritizes these values and really builds up our employees and then also those we work with every day. So one of the pieces that we worked on as a group, and I'll let FNS speak a little bit more to the significance of this, but we created a commitment statement. And before you use a commitment statement that we worked on, we met actually pretty much relatively in the beginning, and we separated into different groups. And within our respective groups, we came up with what we thought were good kind of talking points for this commitment statement. And then we got our 2 groups together. And then from that, this came out. Fast forward a few months and we held a meeting with our supervisors and our middle managers. And we explained to them the work we had been doing, and we rolled out this commitment statement and we asked for their feedback. And they had some feedback, they had some thoughts. And so those were incorporated into this as well. And so what's before you now is the commitment statement that we've all agreed to, and I'll let FNS speak a little bit more about the importance and significance of why we did this.
One of the things that a commitment statement does is serves as the North Star, what we call the North Star for the work. And we try to write it in a very simple way, and it has to be written by leadership themselves rather than having communications or the HR department write it. Part of that is part of the leadership development exercise where they talk about the words, the concepts, and the phrases, and how that ties to your shared values as a city, what those are, and the strategic direction of the city. So being real clear, because as you start to develop a more strategic plan with pillars and actions and measures and outputs, you want to ask the question, how does it fit what you've committed to as the leadership of the city? And what do these words mean? So part of the process was having the leadership team talk about, when we talk about all people, what do we mean? We talk about all cultures, all identities, valuing the differences that make us stronger, focusing on things like empowerment, inclusivity, and belonging, that we are a diverse team in the city that can more effectively meet the unique requirements of the communities that you're serving. Part of this philosophy was based on the work that I did with the ISO organization, the International Organization for Standardization, where I helped lead the development of a diversity and inclusion standard, a guidance standard. And so what we're using are the suggestions that are part of that document, which was approved by the International Organization in 2021. And so it starts, that process starts with leadership and governance, really ensuring that you and city leaders and employees in general have a fairly good understanding of this. And we'll go more into detail about what that looks like as we move through the slide presentation.
So one thing that obviously is really important to know is who do we represent? So who lives in Lakewood? And this information is from the 2020 census, and it can be found on the city's equity index map, actually, that's on our website. So as you can see, the breakdown there by percentages through the various nationalities that are represented on or the various races, excuse me, that are represented on the census. And then the next slide shows us who works for Lakewood. So this is demographic data from the first quarter of 2024. This lets you know what our employee breakdown is. And then what I did in parentheses was included a comparison against the demographic data from the census. So you can see how that measures up. So one of the things that we did is as we went through this process, as I mentioned earlier, we worked on definitions as a group. And we talked about what does diversity mean? What does equity mean? What does inclusion mean? What does belonging mean? So one of the things that we reviewed when we were looking at diversity is there's a lot of complexity to diversity. It's not one or two things. And this diversity wheel reflects that. It shows you, it can be everything from your socioeconomic status to your religious beliefs to something that's maybe more visible, such as your race or your gender orientation. So just some things to be mindful of, because I think a lot of times it's really easy to just lump something into like one or two things. And so we had a discussion about that. And this diversity wheel really does a nice job of showing all of the things that compose us as people.
And just a couple of comments about this particular graphic and its relationship to the commitment statement. The final sentence in that we're all in. And so if you think about diversity, I had a conversation with someone a week or so ago when says, I'm looking to hire a diverse person for my organization. And so I had to remind them that diversity is about the collective. It's about the entirety of the organization. There's no such thing as a diverse person. There's a person who represents certain dimensions of diversity. So if you look in this room, all of us in the room bring to the situation, to the employment arena and workforce, certain aspects and dimensions of diversity. So as we think about the concept, we want people to think about, because historically people have thought of, when you say the word diversity, they've thought of race or gender or sexual orientation or people with disabilities. Those are important and oftentimes considered primary dimensions, but there's a broad set of characteristics, perspectives, background, and cultural heritage that forms that. And again, it's about the collective, not specific to an individual.
And then the next slide is just the definition of diversity, but we don't need to go into that, but I just wanted to include that so you could see sort of what we all were working off of. Following that is equity defined. And one thing I think too that is very common is equity and equality tend to get intermixed, which is easy. They have, a lot of the same letters and they, kind of are the same idea, but not really. So one of the things that we really teased out was what is equity versus equality. And actually the next slide really demonstrates this. So as it says, equality doesn't mean equity. So giving everybody the same size box doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to be able to reach the apple, but providing them with the number of boxes they need to reach the apple, in fact, gives them equity and helps them achieve that. And FNS could probably much more eloquently explain that a little bit better than me.
What I would say for a city, equity really relates to, in many respects, the practices, the processes, and the systems that you have in place, and to look at as the organization becomes more diverse, are there certain practices, processes, ways of operating that you might want to examine to improve those, such that they're reaching out to a broader set of what I call stakeholders, employees, community residents, and so forth. So it's even in the delivery of services, equity would mean that, are you being, if you look at how you're paving roads, for example, are you only paving in one area, or are you looking across the city to see what's the most effective and equitable way to ensure that everyone feels that they're being served appropriately?
And then our next slide is on inclusion. And, this is something that we also talked about as it relates to internally, how our employees are feeling and how they're being received. And then the final slide is on.
Just a comment
sorry,
about
yeah.
just a comment on inclusion. And I know you're probably trying to move through your agenda very quickly, but inclusion basically doesn't mean everybody's involved in everything. Inclusion means who's being impacted by a decision, and are their voices being heard, and are they brought to the table to participate in those decisions that may impact them. So that, to me, it really is diversity is about the what, and inclusion about the how, in terms of bringing people together in that respect.
And then the final is the B, or the belonging. And, inclusion does play into this. And it's basically, a feeling that the organization supports the well-being and contributions of its employees, which I think is important for our employees to feel safe and like they belong and they can share and be a part of that. And FNS can probably speak a little bit more too to what that means on the both
And
internal.
it's really about, I think I would underscore the word feeling. It's how people feel about their lived experience, their experience within the city and their employment and so forth. And it's sort of internal, and how are leaders supporting people feeling a sense of belonging, that psychological safety in the workplace and all that. So that's where the belonging comes in here.
And then, so we've really dialed in on a lot of the work that took us a lot of time, like, just getting to that sort of ground level of like, okay, we all are operating now in the same understanding. We've now moved into the action pillar piece, and I'll let FNS speak a little bit more to the action pillars as we go through these. But as he mentioned earlier, ultimately, these are sort of the building blocks of our strategic plan. So these are where we're gonna put in the work to show, here's our goal, here's our outcomes, here's our outputs, here's our measurements. And it's really also frankly an accountability piece where we'll be able to hold ourselves accountable to what we say we want to achieve. So as a group, the leadership team met and brainstormed a lot of action pillars, and we all had, the assignment to come back and show what our selections were. From that, a subgroup of us met to review, and we identified the ones where there was the most overlap, and that it felt like, okay, these are the three that have risen to the top. And one of the pieces of guidance that we were given by FNS was, don't try to do it all at first, right? Because you're not going to be able to really move the needle. So start, with 3 to 5, and we started with 3, but the idea being that we will add more pillars as we move along. So that was something that the leadership team did, but then we knew we couldn't just write the plan ourselves, right? Because that's not going to really make any sort of difference among the organization. So to actually make a difference, you have to have involvement from all employees within the city. And so this is where we sort of began to make the transition to engaging staff, which has been relatively recent that we've done that. But the goal is not to have leadership actually flesh out these pillars, but instead have employees do it and do that work and come together and then present to the leadership group to see their recommendations and work together on that. So I think on the next slide, it'll identify. Yeah.
Could I just make a comment here? Well, maybe you're.
Yeah, I was gonna say this.
Okay,
so this goes into the action pillar. So go ahead and this speaks, because
well, let me
I
just start by saying that. So what's a pillar, and why did they exist? Well, if you recall that we developed the commitment statement. The commitment statement really takes into account the strategy of the city, the shared values, and kind of the current context of how the city operates. And so in the discussions, the interviews with you, the interviews with each member of the leadership team for the city, we looked at what are some of the opportunities. We don't want to throw out things that are working well. What we want to do is build on what the city has been doing well, and then to look for those areas where there are perhaps some significant gaps. The question becomes one, what are the most significant high impact gaps that we have towards what we're trying to do in terms of that commitment statement? So in the ideation process, the work with the groups, they identified 3 pillars, because one of the things often happens in these kinds of processes, people brainstorm and come up with a lot of ideas and they want to take them all on. I said, well, You've got to think about your resources. You've got to think about how much time and money you can spend. You've got to think about capabilities, who's around that can do that. So all of that came into play. The input, the current the context and so forth, to sort of began to shape the development of the pillar. So I'll just stop there for now.
Sure. And then I think the next slide identifies the three pillars that we're beginning with. And the selection, the ones that rose to the top were leadership, talent, and education. And then we'll get into each of those. So the next slide shows for us, this is what we defined as leadership. So it's the city's commitment to this process and accountability to execute that commitment and drive change within the organization. So, one of the things that we've talked a lot about is if your leadership is not in support and not on board, it's going to be really hard to try to move the organization forward together. And so I don't know if FNS, if you'd like to speak a little bit more to the leadership component.
Sure. In each of these pillars, there's first of all, we spent time talking about when we talk about it from a DEI lens, what's the definition of leadership? So what you see here is the definition. The next phase of the process then is an examination of where are we lacking based on the input and so forth. And then using that gap assessment to understand what are the long-term outcomes that you're desiring in that. We'll move, I think we're going to move through that. And then from there, you define what the most significant gaps are and what actions, outputs, measures, and accountabilities, so that we take a plan, do, check, act kind of a process, a total quality process in working through this.
And then, go ahead.
And so, again, the reason for leadership being here is that leadership sets the tone. They hold people accountable. They, have the responsibility for resource allocation and so forth. And so leadership needs to understand this work at a personal level, such that as they start to review what a pillar team, which we'll talk about, comes forward, they have some grounding and understanding of what the city is trying to do overall. And so that's an important part of it, the role modeling, the holding people accountable, being able to give an elevator speech. If they're out, if one of the leaders is out in the community talking to a group and they ask you about this, they can talk about it fairly easy and succinctly.
And then our next pillar is talent. And so for this, we're focusing on the equitable recruitment practices, talent development, and employee retention strategies. And that's something that rose to the top for the leadership group, in that we understand, we want to have an opportunity for our employees to, advance. And we recognize there's some limitations within our small organization, but there's ways in which we can continue to educate and develop and provide opportunities for people to move up where applicable, or if it's not within here, maybe it's to another organization, but basically helping prepare them and ushering them along in that process.
And so there's several things associated with that is your talent acquisition strategies. What are the ways in which you're currently seeking talent to be employed by the city? And are there any gaps in that process, whether it's, approaches, whether it's composition of the workforce, whatever. And it also is looking at, as you bring people on board, are there some things that could be done, building on things that you're already doing to really enhance a sense of belonging, a feeling that I'm being respected and valued here in the city as an employee. So it's both the recruitment, the development, and the retention of talent is what we're going to be asking the group to take a look at.
And one of the priorities that's, been it's not new to the city is hiring staff and employees who align with the folks we serve. So as we saw earlier, the slides between who works for the city and who lives in the city, one of the goals that we have as an organization is to try to bring those numbers closer together so that the individuals who are working here are the same as the folks who live here. And that's one of the pieces of this, looking at what are ways in which we can do that and how can we do that. And You can say it all you want, but what are the accountability pieces that we're gonna put in place to really try to achieve that, where we can? So that's part of, I think, what drove this for a lot of the directors was that piece of the puzzle that we've talked about and that we strive to do, but this is just adding, more to that goal. And then the final pillar is education. And, this is something where we felt it was important for our city to make sure that our employees are also going through this training and understanding. And it's more than just training, but the idea is to raise the level of awareness among staff of this area, these areas, these topics. Whether that's because they're, forward-facing jobs and they're interacting with different folks, or, just internally, making sure that we have that inclusive, belonging environment where folks feel comfortable. And I don't know if there's any more that you would want to share about the education piece, but.
Yeah, I think a part of it is really understanding what the most significant learning opportunities and gaps in terms of capabilities, particularly in terms of shifting to a more inclusive approach to how you're delivering services and so forth. One of the things that a lot of companies will do, organizations will do, is they will survey employees to get a sense of how they feel. And we use that as a basis for kind of zoning in on what makes sense. There is a certain cadence to this work. You can't do everything. Some things you may say, we just want to do some foundational training around respectful behavior and fairness, whatever. But the objective of the education group will be to zone in on what are the high impact, easily implementable kinds of things, not to try to cover and come up with a laundry list of 100 training courses, but if you can only pick 2 or 3 that you'd like everyone to get better at, skills that you'd like people to get better at, what would those be? And as a tactic, what's the most appropriate way to go about getting that or delivering that for employees here in the city?
So here's just a sort of short kind of summarized timeline of where we are, where we've come from, and where we're going. So as you can see, the first phase was really focused on the leadership assessment, the personal action planning, the education sessions, and we didn't meet quite as frequently kind of in that period. But once we hit summer of last year, we started to begin that more consistent meeting schedule and made a lot of progress. And that's now we've moved, well, I guess we just ended May, but we moved into the phase 3. So we finally went from the leadership level to roll out to our supervisors and our middle managers, held a couple of meetings with them to just explain to them the work that we were doing, answer their questions. In addition, directors were also sharing this with their employees and staff meetings, as well as having sort of touch-ins with their supervisors and their managers. We did recently conduct a staff-wide DEIB focus survey for the very reasons in which were just stated, to create sort of that foundation and that baseline to understand. And the goal is that some of the results from that survey will be available to the action pillar teams as well. So as they're working on their pillars, it'll allow them to see some of the areas where maybe there's some work that can be done. And then we also, this really has been rolled out within the last few weeks. We've now created the pillar working team. So after this was rolled out staff-wide, we opened the opportunity for people to volunteer to join. And I think in most cases, people actually volunteered. They were not voluntold, which is very encouraging. We weren't sure, but we had a good group of individuals who stepped up and said they wanted to be a part of this. And so they recently had their orientation at the end of May. And my understanding is they are just running. So they hit the ground almost at like a very steady, fast jog sprint. And they're meeting, I think, weekly. And they're already, I'm hearing good things about some of the work they've been doing. And then the next steps, so we're kind of rolling now into phase 4. They're currently working on the action pillar development. And ultimately, they will be presenting their recommendations to the leadership team. And then the leadership team will review those and presumably have some discussions about those, with the end goal of getting to where we're all comfortable with then rolling that into the drafting of the plan. And I think, FNS can speak a little bit more to the action pillar work because it is definitely a process. They were given a workbook and there's specific items in which they're going to be tackling. And obviously, it's pretty detailed, but it's important work that they'll be doing.
Well, part of I use the PDCA model, the Plan, Do, Check, Act, total quality process. From my background as a warehouser, I did a lot of work in HR with the firm for many, many years. And my belief is that you go slow. Part of just taking people through the process is the learning experience, as well as the development of a design and an implementation strategy. And to take your time, don't try to rush it. This is agile. My philosophy is agile, ongoing work. You don't do this and then it's over and done with. This is a way to integrate your diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategies into your strategies as a city. For example, if you think about service delivery and how might diversity impact how you think about that. If you think about policing, what are some DEI implications, with respect to policing and so forth. So being very thoughtful, being very focused in terms of the process and helping people understand and roll up the sleeves and get it done themselves, as opposed to being given a framework and a platform to do it. My philosophy is that that there's no cookie cutter approach to this. The best way to implement a sustainable change process is to tie it back to kind of the core mission of the city or the organization, the strategic priorities for the city, to build on what's already been working pretty effectively as a city, because you've been here and you've been doing some things and we've heard about those, but it's building kind of a framework so you can more easily talk about those and build actions that really continue to focus on delivering against that long-term outcome. So it's really outcome-based with a set of actions for each of the outcome areas in those 3 areas. In terms of actions, it's looking at what are 2 or 3 significant tactics that you might consider. Don't consider everything you can do. Some things, it might be a given that you should be doing those anyway, and they shouldn't be part of a bigger plan. And the real key is to keep it simple, keep it understandable so leaders and employees can talk about it, have a conversation about it, provide feedback on it, and continually to improve and adapt. The 3 pillars that you have now, in 6 months or 18 months from now, you may decide, well, I think we're gaining good ground here, but there's another area we ought to really start to focus on. For example, service delivery. How are we delivering our services? And if we take an external approach, what are the things that we should be considering as a part of the plan? So it's a much more holistic plan that looks at all aspects of the way the city operates and so forth.
I think we're at the point now for
Questions?
questions, if you have any.
Reactions?
Questions?
All right.
Well, I have one to kick off, just in my general, some other comments. I love the last slide. The work looks great to me. I love the big wheel, obviously, of the diverse experiences, voices, portions of our collective character, right? That really does flesh it out much better. The external work is the one that would be fun or interesting to noodle over as an executive team, right? How do we then take this and understand where we are and where we should go externally in the equitable delivery of municipal services, and kind of game that a little bit so that there's a better understanding or more clarity of what it really means to dig perhaps a little bit deeper to make sure that our decisions are achieving the goals, right? It would be a fascinating exercise to work on. Or
one of the
study
things that I
session.
did, well, I've done it with several organizations
Yeah.
now, is to look at all of the functions that the organization delivers, including products and services,
Yeah.
customers, other external stakeholders. So it's looking at it from what I call a stakeholder perspective, and who are they, and how are our strategic plans being developed to support kind of the delivery of services to those stakeholders. and what's the DEI implication, if there is one.
Right.
And so it's sort of looking at what you're doing, so it begins to get built into the DNA of how you just operate your products and services
Mhm.
and so forth. So it's, I think it's a much more sustainable, the more you can tie this work as a lens for everything you do, the more sustainable and more long-lasting it likely will become.
For sure. Mr. Branstetter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the fact that you've come back with this update here to be able to go and do that. I've been hoping for one for a while because it's been a year plus since we started. And we started with, when we began, I had really high hopes that this was going to be a start of a strengthening of the city, being able to go and do that, because I think that's what a commitment to DEIB and a clear understanding of that is, to be able to go and do that. And I also concurred with the fact that we were going to start to strengthen ourselves internally before we decided to tell the rest of the community what they what they might do to strengthen the whole community to do that. But I have to tell you that I am somewhat disappointed. I like what you've done and where you're going and the concept of pillars to do that. But I guess that I will tell you that I feel excluded. In other words, you talk about we're dealing with the employees of the city as the internal audience here to do that. And we are all employees, okay? But no, there was no effort to reach out to us to participate in the efforts that you have said, or that all employees were going to look to be able to go and do. And in contrast, I say, if you exclude us from the set of internal folks, then when we're going to start to focus on the external, are we excluded from that too, to be able to go and do that? In other words, I just feel the council is sort of left in the middle. The three pillars, certainly two of the pillars have real value to us as council members in terms of understanding the aspects of how DEIB things can contribute to leadership and being able to go and do that. And certainly education is something that we as an internal element of the city would benefit from if we're looking to go to do that. And in terms of providing services, I got an email account that tells me that I'm providing or expected to provide a lot of services to the community and work hard to be able to go and do that. So, I would really like, as the process moves forward, because it is today where it is, okay, and there hasn't been a lot of inclusion of this set of employees to do that, but of finding a way that we can belong to this project as that is focused on the internal workings of the city, okay, and be able to do that. I'd like to do that. I speak for myself that I'd like to be involved in helping the whole team of the city, from the last employee that we hired to pick up paper in the parks to the senior managers that we have to be able to do that. I think we're all in this together to be able to go and do that. And that, so I'd ask you to think about the fact that there are 7 employees here that have kind of been excluded from the work so far, with the exception of your initial interview of all of us. And I think I don't know whether you interviewed our newer folks as they came on, or not, to be able to go and do that. But I speak for myself that I had expectations of being able to be involved and contribute to this work, and don't feel like I've been given that opportunity.
That's a very valid point. I really appreciate the input, and I'm sure the city manager and the staff appreciate it as well. Our intent in this first phase of the work was to really work with your employees that are leading the city first, but it's not to, we don't want to leave you with the impression that we don't want you involved and included in the process. So I appreciate that. And if there's a way that we can, and I'll talk with Brent and others on ways that we can bring you more up to speed. It was certainly not our intent to have you leave with a feeling of not belonging or being included. That was not the intent. The intent was really to get the first part of a process like that, particularly with the leadership, the staff leadership, is that people are at different places oftentimes. And so part of this process was really getting through a series of sessions to help them come to one accord on what the objectives are from a city perspective. So I appreciate that, and I know Brent, so we'll think of ways to make sure that you are part of that process.
Any other comments, thoughts? Councilmember Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it. Because I know you just did focus on internally, that's where my questions will lie. So you talked about the 3 pillars, the leadership, talent, and education. The next step I would be is you said that you were going to do some proposed outcomes that were going to be coming out of those 3. Is that correct?
That's the work that the action pillar teams are currently doing right now.
Okay, that's what I want to know. And then you would come back with us and say, here is what we have proposed for the proposed outcomes for the 3 pillars.
So those pillar teams will bring their recommendations to the leadership team. The leadership team will go through the process that's facilitated, and I don't know exactly all of that nuance, but then that work would result in whatever the final is, if you will. And then at that point, we can come back to council and provide another update if we're at that point.
Okay, so we wouldn't have any input on the 3 pillars. And I think that's what Councilmember Branstetter was pointing towards, is looking for some sort of input, correct?
Yeah, more participation than necessarily specific input. I mean, I sort of have been seeking out on my own ways, items of education in this area, attending some AWC classes and things to do that, but not as a part of a systemic process here. So it's not so much that I've got input, is that I have a desire for participation. And I think that when we make the transition from internal to external, the folks in the community are going to see the city council as an internal group that's communicating to them. And I think if we're somewhat engaged all along, we'll be better able to do that.
Right, and I agree. I would like a little bit of participation in that too, especially when you brought up we are considered employees also. I mean, in a way, like you were mentioning, part of the culture here. And when you brought up the different pieces and parts, I know it only focused on racial diversity for the city of Lakewood, but it was 70%. So I was just seeing that was, I believe, one of the slides that was brought up. So I would like to have some different voices, would be really good. And so I'd appreciate a little bit of participation on my part too. Thank you.
Yep, thank you for that feedback, and we'll work with the city manager.
Well, being inclusive myself, I'm going to call on Councilmember Lauricella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Grimley, Mr. Henderson. I have a few questions. So first, I appreciate, as a Lean Six Sigma guy myself in industry, I appreciate your philosophy of continuous improvement and an agile approach to doing this. So that's great. How well is it taking hold at all levels of the organization right now? You said, this says you completed a survey last month. How did those results look in terms of ownership for all employees of the city?
Well, I think the survey itself was more a kind of creating of a baseline. So FNS had a survey that really just kind of helped us get a sense of how does this, how do these various questions, how are they answered across? And we had just shy of half of our employees take it, which I think actually is pretty good. I was, for comparison's sake, citing a different survey where we had far less folks. So I thought that was a good sign. But, I think, to be honest, it's still relatively new for individuals. And I know that our employees knew that the leadership team was working on this, but we're now at the point where the conversations are happening a little bit more, and directors are being encouraged to just talk casually with their folks as well, check in with their Action Pillar team members. So I think it's still relatively new for some people. As was stated earlier, I think we're all at different levels in our awareness and our engagement in this. So for some folks, it's like, oh, we're finally doing this. For other folks, it's like, I don't even know what DEIB means. And so it's going to be a process to sort of bring everybody together. But I would say we're still on the new side as far as organization wide. But as noted, the fact that we had so many people volunteer to be part of the Action Pillar team, I think that we're going to start to see it roll a little bit more now, where hopefully they'll speak with their peers, their colleagues, share about what they're doing. I hope to provide periodic updates when sort of milestones are being reached organization-wide as well, to just keep it out there for awareness levels. So, we're now beginning that rollout. And I think we're already seeing people have a little bit better
Step up.
understanding than maybe even 3 weeks ago, to be honest. So it's just slow process.
Yeah, the thing that I would say, and it's not unusual for organizations when they begin to work in this area, to have people at different levels of understanding, commitment, because of their own lived experiences and backgrounds and so forth. And so part of the process we've been going through is to try to understand that and understand kind of where the most significant gaps are before we start to launch into kind of the areas of focus. We do know that, and we've talked with staff about the current context. So we know that it's a very volatile, a VUCA, kind of environment in the world. And so we really want to be very careful and sensitive to how we talk about, how we frame the information that we're sharing, such that we're really building the type of momentum that will keep it sustainable and so forth. So that's why a part of the process has been the way that it has. It feels like it's a long time, but there are two aspects of it. You're building the model, but you're also developing competency and understanding. That's why Brent is doing most of the talking and not me. And we want all of the city leaders to be able to do that and talk effectively about it. But the pillars, just one more comment about the pillars, that's where the sleeves get rolled up. That's where you go through and say, if you look at talent, what are our most significant gaps in the city in terms of talent acquisition, talent development, talent retention? And given that, if we can only solve 2 or 3 issues in the next year or so, what would be the most impactful things to do? And then have the team really work on those, have them go through a review process that considers timing, resources, competency, all of that. So that's sort of the process that we're going through, and really building ownership. To your point, we want everyone, including the council, to feel like they're owners of the process and so forth. So whatever we can do to really reinforce that, we really want to do that.
Thanks. With those surveys, how often are you going to repeat those so you can measure your success?
We haven't decided that yet. This is the first survey, I understand, of this type in a while, or perhaps the time it's been done in that way. So as we go through this baseline setting, then we'll work with the city leadership to figure out how often we do an update to see what the trends are.
Okay, thank you. And then if I gathered this correctly, the focus is internal to the city first, right? And looking at everyone inside. I know our survey results for our public showed a difference in opinions of city services depending on racial backgrounds for folks. So that's something that as we go into an external view, we want to make sure we address so that everyone feels that equity. So that's a future topic. And
But I
then,
think it's part of what we call an agile and adaptive process, that there's no straight line. This is not a linear process. It's one where as new information becomes available, as competencies of leaders get better, there may be an oversight that we missed that will integrate it to the next round. And so that's the way that I'm encouraging leaders to think about this. Is it's never ending work. It's just how you shift the priorities at the time based on the needs of the city and the context and so forth.
thanks. I want to make sure we continue to put resources towards this going forward. It's not just a one and done sort of exercise. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate
Thank you.
that. And my last question was just on the statistics you showed, you had the breakdown of people who live in the city and people who, was it work in the city or work for the city?
Work for the city, so
Okay,
our
thank you.
employee demographics.
Gotcha. That's what I wanted. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Councilmember Pearson or Boki, you give the order. Let me conclude by just saying thank you. You know, we had a few little stumbles along the way during COVID and getting this kind of kicked off the ground, and we really appreciate your work, Ephesus.
Thank you.
And Bryn, thank you. The work starting internally will help create that top of mind awareness for sure. And that will just enhance our equitable delivery of municipal services down the road. But I think it will be interesting when you get to the point where we can discuss the external how and why. It'll be great to engage with council as well. It'll be a fascinating exercise because we think we are already doing that work implicitly with all the neighborhood plans we've done, the improvements in the parks throughout the city, especially in those demographic areas that have had less services or less park improvements than other areas of the cities. And so we think we're doing pretty well there, but it'll be great to kind of measure the pulse, check the pulse over the time, just to see how well we are stacking up to our own internal pillars for success in this area.
Thank you. One of the things that I will tell you in the conversations, both with council members and with staff, is that you are doing a number of things. Well, they may not be called DEIB,
Sure. Yeah.
but they really have the same outcome. And so what I encourage the city to do is think about those things that you're doing well,
Mhm.
continue to build on those.
Sure.
And look for those areas where you could stand, that is an opportunity for improvement and so forth. Thank you.
Well, I learned something new because before this presentation, I didn't know there was a B to DEI. So my acronym is expanding. My world is expanding. So,
Well, and
Yeah.
you can thank the city manager for that. So he's been a big proponent of belonging. So that is something that we've been operating on as we've gone through this. So
well, good. I like it.
thank you very much. We
Thank you
appreciate it.
both. Yeah, appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Caulfield, for working through this process and engaging Mr. Henderson and his good work. So thanks for that. Next, in my echoey way with this crazy microphone system, we'll have our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Come on up. So Vito, you're the chair tonight. So I'll have you kind of go through and allow each of the members to just introduce themselves. We have a couple of fairly new members. Welcome, Kate and Shelley.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Much appreciated. I'm Vito Iacobazzi, and I'm filling in for Jason. He's sick today, kind of under the weather. We are grateful to get together and to share our thoughts and talk about maybe some future stuff tonight. I'd like to have the rest of the members introduce themselves.
Okay, Shelley Thiel. Vanessa McClendon. Kate Reed.
And the ever faithful Alan Billingsley.
Thank you. We are happy to have Ryan Pearson on our council liaison, so much appreciated. Thank you. I'd like to just kind of go over real quick what we've done since last time we met, and then advance forward to other things that are on the docket for this year. So just kind of recapping, last summer, we had some good updates on the Nisqually partnership projects, the historic Fort Steilacoom cottage transfer. We had another review of the park CIP or capital improvement projects, the Camp Murray boat launch, and then we spent some time reviewing the park signs and including the wayfinding signs and reader boards that were on the docket, and you guys know about those. In September, we discussed the Fort Steilacoom new park boundaries, which were a little enlightening with Pierce College. We reviewed the non-motorized transportation plan, reviewed again the park signs and electronic reader boards, design options, and discussed the park wayfinding and entrance to Fort Steilacoom Park. In October, we hosted our first, we dusted off the plans that we had for Edgewater Park, and we had our first community meeting. In November, we spent some time on the H-Barn restoration project. We looked at the budget for 24, and then we started our work plan items for 2024. In January this year, we approved, of course, the work plans that you guys approved for the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. And then we started, we reviewed the presentation on the city special events. In February, we hosted 2 meetings on the Edgewater Park master plan development. And then we followed up with another public meeting process and the draft designs that were available that the public looked at. In March, we finalized that Edgewater Park master plan and made recommendations to the city council. In April, we hosted Parks Appreciation Day. And then in May, we discussed how the success of Parks Appreciation Day, and then had another review of CIP that's on the docket for 24, and then prepared for this meeting with the city council. Tonight, we're going to hear, after our meeting, we're going to hear about the senior services presentation. So I'm looking forward to that because we haven't heard it either. In July, we're going to dust off a plan that we did several years ago on the street ends. And I know there's interest with the council to revisit those and to try to put something on the docket for 25 if funding's available. We've been updated on, we'll be updated on the Nisqually Partnership Project and what's in the queue this fall. In October, we're looking at the Camp Murray boat launch, historic Fort Steilacoom cottages. We will also look at playgrounds. There's a number of playgrounds that are in the queue for replacement. And what's new with playgrounds to make them universal play, to make them accessible to all, right? We just looked at that diversity. So we're anxious to review that. In November, we're looking at the climate change initiative, and then how does that fold into the urban forestry program? Those are things that we're all real close to, and we want to be involved how they move forward. There's a number of special events that have already passed on. We started farmers markets last week. Summer concert series starts next week. We already had a jazz night, street festival. Summerfest is around the corner in July. We have Pierce County Trail Days, Truck and Tractor Days in the fall or in October. And then of course the holiday parade of lights and the Christmas tree lighting. That's just a quick overview of accomplishments for 23 and going into 24 and kind of what's still pending. Do you have any questions of us?
I'm sure we have a fair number of them. I'll open it up though. Questions? Mr. Branstetter.
One of the advantages of being at the end of the table is that he always just looks over this way first. To be able to go and do that. First, I just want to comment on your work on Edgewater Park and getting us to a master plan that has now set the stage for ongoing improvements there to do that. Because it was, generally over the course of the history of the city, trying to do something positive in parks has always been cheered. And that wasn't the universal view with this. And so I think that you did a good job of staying on the theme of that parks and recreation and outcomes are for the community as a whole and not narrowly to do that. And you kept thick enough skins to be able to get through those meetings and do well. And I think that you handled those very well. Okay, and I appreciate both of the manner in which you did it and the outcomes. And I think that some of the people who were there, even though they had contrarian views, appreciated the amount of time you provided them to express their opinions or vent if that's what they were looking to do, but that they didn't feel shut out or shut down, and so I appreciate to do that. Looking ahead at two things, okay. One is down the road there is in the CIP in the near years to. And the word is like to update the playground at Fort Silicon Park, which is kind of the premier thing. And I remember how it was created and had a role of being able to put some sweat equity into that and do that. And they got my name on a slat out there somewhere and being able to go into that. And many in the community did that, and it was a very much community project. But I didn't know whether as we go to that playground is getting to near end of utility, are we going to try to do something, or if you would be considering whether to try to build a coalition within the community again to do a rehabilitation of that, or even a new concept in terms of what it is, okay? Or certainly we don't want to just sort of put some duct tape and more nails on what's there. Just try to it's a chance to showcase and do something that goes on as technology for all abilities playgrounds has engaged, but something that is as distinctive because well, everybody looks at Fort Silicon Park and they have one thing in it that sort of exemplifies Fort Silicon Park to them. For many families, it's that playground, and we kind of want that to do. The other comment I would just make, and I know you indicated you got a presentation and you've been tracking as we have, okay, the efforts for Partners for Parks of being able to move forward to raise funding to be able to bring the H barn into community service, to make it a community entity to do that. I would just say that although the fundraising started with one particular concept of what the barn would become once it was rehabilitated and being able to go and do that, I think the council, we have had some discussions of where we're sort of more open to wanting to make sure that whatever the final vision of that is that it is available and is an amenity to not just a narrow group in the community, but that it has elements to it that it can be done to do that. As in the same way that the pavilion has grown from what was originally a relatively narrow focus, so that it was going to sort of be a finance neutral thing that would be done to something that is now found a use in many ways to do that. And I would say that so that when we go from Partners for Parks success of getting to their 3.1 or 3 million, and then the city begins to move forward with our working to get to our $3 to $4 million to put into that project. When we get to that point, we're going to have to reassess and be able to articulate a vision to the funding entities like the legislature and others that we're going to go and do. And the legislature has shown a desire that they like to fund things that many people will use in many ways, okay, as opposed to something that is more narrow. And the current vision that we started with, because you got to start from someplace, is maybe narrower than it needs to be in terms of what all that the H barn could be utilized for. And you're sort of our think tank on that, okay? And so I don't want you to go and think that we're locked in groupthink with what was proposed 4 years ago on a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Mr. Boki, got your finger on the button there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. I did watch the Edgewater Park, one of the hearings, and I really do appreciate your patience. The level of discourse was, in my mind, very poor. The behavior of a lot of the participants was very poor, and it exemplified a lot of what is wrong with what's going on in our country today. It's just bullying. I just thought a lot of it was just bullying. It wasn't any different than 8th grade, And there were positive things said, but I think you handled it well, and I think you came up with a very nice plan for that. I think we're all excited about the Camp Murray boat launch. I don't know where that's going though, because the state of Washington has, the National Guard has an ability to put things on deep freeze for, we deal in years, they deal in decades, I think. And I would say maybe the same thing about the Fort Steilacoom. I noticed you put the Fort Steilacoom cottages on here a couple of times, and I'm like, I'm not sure that the state of DSHS is ready to, or Division of Behavioral Health or whatever they call it now is ready. I don't know that I would spend a lot of your time on things where the state is, I think they're beginning to move on the Camp Murray boat launch, but they just have a way, I guess. And it's my understanding they're not really interested in doing anything with the cottages till after the construction is done. I do think the forestry program update will be interesting because I think that we just approved money for a study that's a fairly extensive tree count and canopy look at and everything else. And one of the things that's going to come out of that is they're going to tell us again what neighborhoods don't have trees, and then we need to talk about how we're going to get trees into those areas, and that could include purchasing a property to plant trees on. So there's a lot of things going on, I think, in that area. So talking about strategies and that kind of thing. I think I'll leave it at that. I think you guys have done a great job. There's clearly a lot on your plate. We'll probably talk about a downtown park later and where that's going to be. And although that's now public, I guess that we're talking about some property, and so that will, I think, present some real opportunities, and we'll really rely on you guys to really help us through that process. Thank you.
Anyone else, thoughts or comments? Mr. Lorisella?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to give some praise for projects behind us that you've done a great job working with our city staff on. So Harry Todd Park and Springbrook Park, they're gems for our city. They're very well done. And with that, I'm looking forward to Edgewater Park and American Lake North and Wards Lake Park as well. They're all in our future plans, right? And if the past is any indication of what's to come, they're going to look great. Our previous presenter, we were talking about equity and opportunity and accessibility for folks. To me, as we talk lakefront street ends, that is where we have, I think, a legal and ethical obligation to provide access to all of our residents, these bodies of water that are owned by all of us. We currently have reasonable access on American Lake and on Steilacoom Lake, but our third largest lake, Gravely Lake, does not currently have an easily accessible area. So as we come back to the study next month, you said you're going to be looking at that. I encourage looking at that. And yeah, I look forward to hearing what you come up with as it relates to Gravely Lake. Thank you.
Mr. Pearson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight I went to the Clover Park meeting to give the city update, and one of the items on their agenda was discussing what to do with the Lake City property and potentially, you know, doing some improvements for a park. And I don't know what our involvement has been as it relates to partnering with the Clover Park. I know that we have apparently a partnership for Lake Louise to have, you know, a co-use park and playground. And I would just encourage us to be open and, you know, transparent and willing to help. I don't think that they have really any plans to do anything with that property in the next, you know, decade or more. From what I've heard, it's the potential site for if they need to, you know, have a transition school during, you know, if they are building a school on one of their other sites, and they could do something temporary there if they needed to. You know, as we look at that area, that's not really an area that's going to get a whole lot of new density. And so I don't know of any new schools that they would really plan for that. But if nothing else, you know, how can we get involved? How can we help facilitate something that would be a really, you know, transformative park or school playground, you know, facility in an area that really desperately needs it? When you look at that area of the city, you know, yes, it's close to American Lake Park, but that isn't really a park that's used by kids and athletes and people wanting to go run their dogs around, or, you know, run their kids around playing Frisbee and football and soccer and things like that. So if we can get involved and be supportive and of whatever we can with them, I think that would really, you know, go a long ways in helping revitalize, you know, those neighborhoods and really be a you know, a beacon of hope and, you know, something that would drive people to that area. I've heard that the school district has some different level of risk as it relates to school parks and playgrounds. And so I'm not sure what, you know, that looks like for them, but you know, if we can offer something to help alleviate any risk as it relates to parks. I know the cities have some, you know, not exemptions, but some different levels of risk for immunities for parks. And so if we can, you know, offer up that or whatever else, I would be really supportive of that. So thank you.
Any other thoughts besides Mr.
Well, I'll
Billingsley?
just reply to that a little bit. We did have an original years ago arrangement where we called them schools as parks. It was an arrangement the city had with the one school that they did develop the playground signage that says the area is open after hours of school to expand parks and areas for places where we needed it for equity, and a lot of places like that. It has not progressed much, and that is a spot perhaps where the city council can help with a close connection to the Clover Park School District. We have a lot of property throughout our city that is currently green grass areas with playgrounds that are fenced off that can be put into use and are being put into use as parks. And a good connection with the school district can help further that, because as our city becomes more built out with these ADUs and more intense housing development, we're going to need more parks in our community. That's part of our healthy community, is to have the parks in them. And we've got a lot of things coming. We have the H Barn that will be a gathering place for the entire community. We've got Edgewater Park, which is now going to give the community access to Stillicum Lake and a waterfront. We need a downtown park. Clearly, it's in the works, but it's something that we need to consider. And so a lot of this is going to come back to the Parks Board, I think, for some flushing out and such too, particularly when we look at doing that in conjunction with the urban forestry goals. These are going to all have to work hand in hand. So I can see a lot of things on the table for the Parks Board and the City Council to make all these things work in the future as our city expands. Schools is a really good opportunity for us, though, that's not expensive, but very inclusive to where our schools are, so.
I absolutely agree with you on that, Alan. You know, we had talked about it at one point. I think we've got an MOU in place with at least one of the schools. Ms. Dodsworth can kind of educate us on that, but one wonders why it couldn't be expanded. Maybe it's a liability issue we can take another look at. I know other communities like Olympia, for instance, we lived in the west side of Olympia when we first moved over to the western side of Washington. And the school grounds, that was the local park for our neighborhood area. And we could walk dogs there. You got to be responsible, obviously, but you could do lots of great things in those areas. And one wonders why we can't do something similar here. We should think about that maybe, because that does provide more equitable solutions to other geographic areas of the city. In addition to the vibrant parks facilities that you have so well helped put together for all of us. You know, we often talk about the vision for the city. It's a city that's family friendly, that's robust, it's known for its recreational amenities. And from 1996 to date, we've come so far, much in part to thanks to the good work that you guys have done. But think what we can do in the next 5 to 10 years of some of the things on this year's work plan. We know we're going to have a downtown park. I'd ask us to think about it, maybe not on this 2024 work plan, but certainly it's coming. What are the things we're missing? What are the components we'll need or should have in an urban downtown park that we don't have elsewhere? Splash pad we heard a lot about, right? Access to the water. You know, you probably heard folks at the Edgewater Park meeting say, well, you know, what about X Lake, whether gravelly or otherwise, right? And now there may be an opportunity for you to think through some of those issues as we look to the street ends or some other alternatives. So Lakewood has changed, in my humble opinion, for the better, especially with regard to the parks and recreation amenities that we have spent, and I should say invested millions of dollars into. And I think it's attracting people to come live here and to work here, and it's making those families who currently and have lived here, it's making their lives brighter and better, especially with the connectivity, with the infrastructure improvements and the sidewalks. And I hear about that every day. And even people are coming around to the roundabouts, right? They're saying, well, I kind of like those. I know it's not on your work plan, but it certainly helps people get to the park amenities that have been part of your work plan. So I just want to say thanks again. Keep up the good work on all of it. Any other thoughts for the good of the order on this? Mr. Brandstetter and then Vito.
Yeah, I would just say that I think that while the city council gets a lot of credit for things that happen, I think that we recognize the yeoman's work that you have done regarding the park system as a whole and the way they go. But I guess I would want to assure you that we we sort of see what the pattern is, and that if the council can come up with real estate that you can then use as a place to paint and create something, you know, and then after you get to that, where you get to a master plan for it, then we'll work on dollars to bring the two-dimensional thing into 3D dimension. Pretty soon we'll have AI assistants in using 3D printers to create trees, and that'll solve Mr. Folky's problem about where to put it. But we are doing a lot around the real estate angle, whether it's in the downtown, whether it's in the boat launch area, whether it is considering some water district property that might come to us, some DSHS property, and school district co-use property that is going to be fallow for decades or more, that maybe can get into something more temporarily. Every success that we have stimulates the appetite in the community for more. So, you know, we're going to have to move forward with doing that, but, you know, you do a lot of yeoman's work, okay, and you bring a lot of expertise and experience as to how to actually make parks and recreation elements happen, and it's certainly greatly appreciated by the council.
Beautiful.
Thank you for those comments. Those are all great. I think right on target. We're thinking along the same path. You know, as I'm driving through Lakewood and I'm coming down 112th and I see a bunch of homes that are fenced off that are going to be demolished. And I think it's going to be apartment complexes that it's on the north side of the transit center. And it looks like it's a pretty good sized spot. And my first thought is, where are those kids going to play? And, you know, okay, there's Lakeview Elementary, but that's a ways away. But those are the questions that we need to talk about, discuss, and as we put in more apartments because of the comprehensive plan, how do we balance that all out for play, for recreation? And then I'm going to throw in more stuff like, how do we roll in urban forestry and planting and street trees and that kind of thing? So we have a canopy that is good for the community, right? So those are things that we had on our list to talk about further, you know, is to go, how do we dust off all of these things? Because they all need to marry together. They can't stand alone by themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Anything else, folks?
We have some questions.
Sure. Oh, please. Yeah.
Yes, several months ago, I was interviewed for one of the two vacant positions on this board. And by the way, thank you for your approval. I was interviewed by the mayor, Whalen. And during that interview, he had mentioned downtown park. Knew nothing about it. Knew the whole idea, vision. Our question is, how do you see the role of the park board in the vision for that area?
Well, I'll kick that off. We are in the process of acquiring property. So you probably, I mean, it's public knowledge. You may have heard we made an offer, haven't heard formally back on that offer. So we're proceeding with the next step, which is to have a public hearing, I think July 1, to discuss, you know, whether we should proceed with condemnation on that. And then it's a question of fair market value and that kind of thing. That particular property, again, matter of public knowledge, is about a 1.58 acre parcel, what we would call the bagel block over by the Colonial Plaza. So once property gets under city ownership and we do what we need to do to, you know, demo the existing building, then I think it goes at some point to Mary and her team and the Parks Board to start the process of a legacy plan. with community input for that. And we've all heard lots of stuff what people would like to have, and that's what you guys get the chance to have kind of first crack at getting community input and putting together the components of a legacy plan for that urban park area. And the other thing, and this is just me thinking out loud, that if in that area on the remaining 5 acres or in the parcel behind the Barnes and Noble, where there's going to be hopefully some apartments being built, there has to be some dedication of open space as part of our planning department requirements or our sub-area plan requirements. And so there maybe isn't as much input on that particular component of open space for the PRAB as there would be for the Community and Economic Development Department. But there could be, you know, and there could be some input on that because you're right, as the city densifies, there needs to be open space, and there has to be some part of that dedicated toward some open space. So certainly a discussion we can have, but to your point, Shelley, on the city urban park, that's the process. We'll acquire the property, and then Mary and her team with PRAB will then begin the process of discussing components of the master plan with lots of public input and certainly input by the council, because we have opinions on everything. Just ask us. So hopefully that's an answer to that question. Yeah. And thank you for your service for sure. Kate, anything? Let me grab the mic there real quick. Yeah. I know you're capable.
For the urban forestry that we keep talking about, we've been planting a number of street trees, but I haven't seen or really heard about a good maintenance program for them. And the younger the trees are, that's when we should be training them. Because I live on veterans, I walk veterans every day. So I look at the trees and they're getting out of shape. They're going to be harder to maintain if we don't take and have a program that actually takes care of them. And we need to train the trees. They live in a very small area. In fact, if you ask my opinion, take the shrubs out, the irrigation is being inhibited by the shrubs, so the trees don't get any water. So it's like we need to develop, and I know this is a public works thing, but we need to start thinking about how we look at trees and what is needed. I mean, a lot of those plant material could go to a park. They could go to Fort Steilacoom, and that would be a good use for plants. But the trees don't need anything at their roots. They're beautiful as they are. And with that, but I think that the council and working with other departments needs to start thinking about, and just instead of planting trees, how are we going to take care of them? That's our canopy that we need to develop.
Excellent point. And Ms. Dawsworth sitting back there, that's actually part of her bailiwick, which is
I know we
maintenance of trees and shrubs in the right of way and the medians. One of the things that you may be pleased to know, last council meeting, we adopted as part of the urban forestry program or passed a contract with an entity that's going to be conducting a survey of all the trees in the city in the public rights of way, in the parks, the public rights of way, up to 9,000 trees. And I'm sure part of that, I think the analysis as I looked at the contract was to assess the health of the trees, those kinds of things as they go through and do the count. So that's first step in the right direction. It's a $130,000 contract to do that work. And I believe, and Ms. Dawsworth can confirm, that will also be part and parcel of the outcome, a report on the existence, size, species, condition, all those things of the trees. So it leads us to start in the right direction on all of the trees that are in the public right of way and public spaces. So point well taken on that. Anything else on that? Sure, Vanessa.
I think it's my turn. We were talking about the long bikes and e-bikes that are starting to appear on our paths and trails and in our parks, going over any common speed limit that might be, correct or right or anything like that. So our question is, how do we enforce the policies that we have on our trails? How are we going to enforce them in our parks along our paved surfaces?
I want to look around, but I'll do the best I can to give you a response. It's an excellent question. As technology advances, we have the rights of walkers and hikers and joggers and those of bike riders that need to kind of mesh, right? We got to all play fair and nice in the sandbox. So I assume that with the advent of technology like e-bikes, we'll probably have to come up with some internal park policies on that with regard to speed and safety. Not unlike we did for smoking in the park and, use of fireworks in the park, those kinds of things to make sure that the experience is safe for all folks who want to enjoy the amenity. But I don't think we've done that yet, have we, Ms. Johnsworth? Kind of not yet.
We did update the code regarding non-paved stuff. We're concerned about motorized.
Right.
Trails.
Right.
There is a speed limit. And the signage is kind of.
Yeah, and maybe we can work on better signage on that when we get clarity on the rules, because I haven't seen, for example, the beautiful park that's parallel to Elwood. I use it every week. It's absolutely gorgeous. One of the best things I think we've done in recent memory. I haven't seen a lot of e-bike riders yet, but I know they're probably coming. But that would be a good place where we could post a few signs and those kinds of things.
I haven't seen e-bike riders here in the Lakewood parks. I was, we'll say terrorized at a park somewhere in Tacoma, and it was a e-bike that was going probably 27, 30 miles an hour, in a mixed use area where we're walking our dogs and our kids are playing and all of that type of thing, But then also, what is it, the ones with the unibwheel that you stand on and go forward? I've seen a lot more of those lately. Yeah.
It's interesting. I've seen, I don't know what you call them, but on Lake Steilacoom, it's kind of like a uniblade thing. And people are zipping around and I'm going, oh my God, that looks, A, it looks fun. B, it looks terrifying. But it's amazing that those young kids have the balance to do that stuff. But I see a lot of those kinds of mobilities these days. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, Mr. Branstad.
Yeah, that's one of those areas, and there's a lot of them that the best way to set that environment is through education around safety and voluntary compliance, to be able to go and do that. I know that certainly there isn't a tool of where we were looking for parks employees to issue them radar guns or anything like that. And just like the speed limits on other roads. Well, you get voluntary compliance from most people most of the time. You try to do that. In really severe reckless cases, then we have lawyers that file lawsuits to enforce against people that go and do that, and that's unfortunate. But I think that there is a way to do it. And in the things that you mentioned, a vast majority of those users tend to be young people, and young people are very susceptible to being educated in I think the young people today, most of them are receive safety related messaging well, and look to do that. And they are better than most generations about telling their peers and calling them out when they're doing something foolish.
I'd love to have one of those e-bikes, but they're really expensive. So, yeah. Those folks who are putting 7 to 10 grand in an e-bike are probably gonna be kind of careful. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ryan has two.
Well, we got to rent one time and it was really fun. Not locally, but it was fun. Any other questions, comments for the good of the order? Yes.
I just want to tell the council, Mayor, that we are very appreciative how supportive you are of park projects and the Parks Department and and support that you provide, the funding that you provide. So much appreciated, really much appreciated. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it's one of the things, we're all in it together, right? Yeah, big time. Well, thanks again for your service. We appreciate you coming tonight. The work plan looks great. We would all love to pile on more things this year for you, but we're told not to, so we won't. But we planted enough seeds for you to kind of get where we're going on a couple other significant projects. So thank you much. Appreciate it. Okay. It is 8:45. Why don't we take a quick 5-minute recess while or Sally Martinez rather, comes up to give us the utility signal box wrap project update. So let's just take a quick 5-minute recess and we'll come back for that. Sally Martinez, our Recreation Coordinator, about the Utilities Signal Box WRAP project update.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor Whalen and City Council members. I see a new face, so I'm Sally Martinez, and I'm the liaison to the Arts Commission. And I want to thank Patty Bell for also being our City Council liaison to the Arts Commission, and she's just invaluable with her insights and feedback because she is a professional in the industry. So thank you. And I want to introduce Earl Borgert, who's our co-chair of the Arts Commission. And he's really passionate about the Signal Box project and has taken so much of his personal time to really take the lead on the locations and spearheading the dialogues. So tonight, we have a colorful presentation, literally. But before we start the PowerPoint, I'm just going to give you a brief summary, very brief background and history. The Arts Commission developed a public art program, which was a 6-year program. And within that is implementing Signal Box art. And so that started 2 years ago. And the reason we did it was because research showed that it's really cost effective and you can quickly beautify an area. It really engages people in the community in the grassroots level who aren't used to public art, so they can see it. And then it also highlights local artists. So if they see someone they know that's done it, they're more likely to be engaged with public art and want to learn more about it. And it also is extremely low cost for what you get out of it. So I'm sure you've all seen it around. We've done 22 boxes so far, 22 locations. And the very first year we were so fortunate in that just by coincidence, a Latino group of artists approached us and they wanted to get involved in the city of Lakewood. And so they were the first ones to create art for the Signal Boxes, and it is our biggest minority population. So that was so wonderful. One of our goals is definitely for the art to highlight the cultural diversity in Lakewood, as well as the history. So these are some of the things we look at when we're deciding what art to select. And kind of the plants and foliage that we have in Lakewood, the history. And so some of those are the things that we prioritize. We've gotten tremendous feedback from the community. And this year, this presentation, we're looking at about 10 new locations and we'll be presenting the artist. We did do a call to artists. That's how we found the artists. And we did it primarily in the South Sound area because of course we want to highlight local artists. Several of them you'll see tonight are from Lakewood and then the surrounding area. Yeah, so we will start with the PowerPoint, and what we are looking for is consensus on the designs from City Council. So Brianna, you can go ahead to the first slide. This is just an overview of the locations that we're looking at and the artists who've been selected and the name of their art, and we'll drill down on that. So we really wanted to do a nod to the military, and this artist, Rebecca Morgan, we thought did an amazing job, and that it would translate well to a wrap, you know. So the caveat is they really have to be able to digitize the art. Now this is already digitized, so we know that's going to be an easy one to do. Okay. Yes. Oh. You know, we don't drill down that far. The artist, these are the ones we selected, but it may be that she has to design additional pieces. So we let them have some freedom with that. This is an idea for Interstate 5 and Highway 12. That was Bill Gibbs. I'm gonna try to point out the artists who are from Lakewood if I can get that sheet of paper. Okay, the next one is for the International District by Adam Welsh. It's called Sushi. We thought that was very clever. It's already digitized. Adam is from Lakewood. Yeah. And so this is Bill Gibbs' work, and he, we were looking at 100th and 40th for his work. It's very colorful. You know, we're definitely looking to brighten up these particular areas that we've selected. And we thought that that would be kind of universal, colorful. I should say the Arts Commission. So this is called Powerline Chat and an Ode to Pets. You know, we know people in Lakewood love their dogs and pets. And again, it's clever, it's colorful. It speaks to the Mount Rainier and will lend itself easily to wrapping a box. The next one is by Han Crimini, so it really speaks to diversity. We love this piece. And he is from Lakewood, and it's called Celebrate Tet. This artist is Rodney King, and his work is stunning. This would be for 100th Street and Lakewood Drive. The first piece is called Did You Know? The second piece is Black Farmers Market. And the third piece is Ballerina. So one thing that we put in the call to artists is also highlighting maybe some of our events like the farmers market. So we loved that he did that. There are 3 boxes at this location. And we also have asked him to do the artist reception first quarter of 2025, which will be part of the MLK celebration. This is A Taste of Lakewood by Rich Reynolds. You know, it's a nod to food in Lakewood. And he lives in University Place, so he's close by and understands. So we thought this location of Lakewood and Bridgeport would be good. You know, that's the other thing we do is we really, as the Arts Commission has this dialogue, they think about what piece is going to go where. And so sometimes we'll defer a piece of art to knowing that there'll be another more suitable location for it. This is called Upstream and Ice Cream Sunset by Holly Robin. And she's from Tacoma. Yeah, it speaks to our nature. This is Lori Davenport. So Lori Davenport is showing at our next art reception in September. And she feels really strongly about the African-American voice and depicting that through art. It's just, Arts Commission just love these pieces. And her work's truly amazing. Yeah. So this is called Water Lily, and Christine Westfall did another piece. It's the heron on the right. And this is the small box next to it that is not wrapped. And we just thought it would go so well. So it wasn't in the original signal box lineup, but it was very well liked. And so the Arts Commission would love to add that box. So then I also included in this next half of the presentation are artists to be considered that the Arts Commission really liked. We like to have artists on hand in the instance, for example, if someone can't digitize their art and we need a backup artist, or there's, you know, funding available to do more. So the first is Kelly Loney. She's done another signal box for us. And this is Pierce Lowland native colors, so every plant and flower in there is in Lakewood and native to Lakewood. Charles Burt is a veteran, and this is, you know, a nod to the military. We liked Ashley Morgan's pieces there, and it's colorful, but they're beautiful. They speak to the orcas in the area, and the sound. This is Brandy LaPointe, who's a Native American artist, and her work's beautiful. Diney Winkle submitted Northern Mite. Very colorful. So that concludes the designs that we're looking for consensus on. And then this last slide is just the boxes we've done to date. And so you can see the 22 locations. Councilmember Branstetter had several amazing questions that I spent the afternoon trying to answer. And so I think you may all have those, but one that I just wanted to mention is the lifespan. And so the lifespan is of the box, the wrap is guaranteed for 2 years, but typically they last 5 to 7 years. And I'll leave it at that for you to ask questions or.
I was just gonna ask about longevity. Are they holding up pretty well? Not just-
Very well.
Yeah.
So I think 2 or 3 have been tagged and they've cleaned up beautifully.
The other thing I'm gonna throw out there, and I'll open it up too, is it seems to me it would be, I mean, some of these pieces are gorgeous. I mean, they're all gorgeous. But some people might love to have the opportunity to buy a poster of it. And I wonder if down the road we could do a selection of 1 or 2 of them by the Arts Commission, vote or something like that, that would enable people to buy a poster size at the farmer's market, signed by the artist maybe, and that way we could raise money for the next iterations of the wraps. Because I know when you go to places like Lahaina, used to have the annual Lahaina poster that everyone would flock to buy because it was an artist thing that they would compete to be selected for the poster of the year, and they were really became collector's items. So that might be something we could do here to raise, you know, more money for the public art fund.
Even like a calendar or something like that too?
You could do a calendar too,
Yeah.
you know, on a scale. That way you might get more of them in one cool package, so that might be an opportunity too. But I'm thinking like whatever 2x3 print
Like
poster that people could take home and then print or frame themselves for their homes because they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and signed by the artist, right? Mr. Boki.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I love them. Great. Go forth, prosper. I'm not going to be an art critic tonight. I do think you guys do an outstanding job of these wraps. I mean, putting them in the right spots. The art itself is incredibly vibrant. I mean, I can't think, I mean, this sounds political. Let me give you a political angle on it. For $2,500, this is a low entry point for something that is taken so positively by the community. There's nothing we do that for $2,500 can create that good a reaction from the public. But part of that is because up front, the art is so well done. I love the fact that it's local artists. I love the fact that it's original art. And I think it has really added to the vibrancy, and you've done your group has done just an incredible job. And I'm just really proud of the work that you've done and proud to be part of it and really make this part of our public art effort, right? And so thank you very much. And hopefully this all just come together.
Thank you. I'll relay that in our next meeting to the Arts Commission. We'll be happy to hear that.
Mr. Branstetter.
Yeah, I certainly like all the designs that the commission has chosen to move forward with, and even and the alternates to be able to go and do that. The one that I have a comment on has to do with the one that is like military one, I guess. It's it's the one that speaks to McCord Field and JBLM and the location that it's proposed is to be on the off ramp of coming off of I-5 onto 512, you know, which is 70% of the traffic on that off ramp is turning left to go to Puyallup. And it's a pretty busy spot to do this. And the most effective visuals of this are people who are on streets that have speed limits in the 30 range, being able to go and do that. And where the drivers are not trying to go to do that. Plus the design of it, where it specifically mentions McCord Field and JBLM, might be better suited to a signal box on that section of 512 that crosses the runway. There's a stoplight there in the South Tacoma Way in 512, where there used to be a gate that goes there or something like that. So that I'd like to use the design, but I think that there might be a way to do that. And I don't think we have any signal boxes all the way on the east side of that, where we have an intersection with Steel Street and there to do that. A good place to look to do that. And I was encouraged that we're although we have more signal boxes to be able to do that, we're thinking beyond signal boxes of places in the public that do that, because they do enhance neighbors and do that. And I see people who are walking that stop to look at them to be able to do that. It isn't just a driver amenity to do that. And I think that my last thought might be, it was come up by, there's a little bit of an international theme on some of the things that are there, is that this summer, when we're hosting some folks from Gimhe, one of our sister cities, of getting them to see some of these things to be able to go and do that. But invite them to have one or two of their artists submit something for the 2020 going forward. You know, that worked very well when we invited them to have children submit things to do that. And we could do that with each of our four sister cities of saying, and even if we just chose one out of or two every year that represented a sister city to be able to go and do that, that is, I think, a good neighborly thing to do and would help promote those relationships.
That's a beautiful idea. Thank you. And it did work so well when Gimhe partnered with us to do the art contest. Could you repeat the location that you recommended for the military?
What I was thinking about is if you go down where South Tacoma Way makes a left turn and then goes towards McCord Field, and then when it comes to 112th, there's a traffic signal there, so I'm assuming there's a box there somewhere, or that road that goes across the runway. There's a traffic light on the other end of that road as well, and the box is there, and McCord Field is right in your eyesight.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that.
Bill.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I'm so glad to have you guys here. Just fantastic job with these signal boxes that have led into so many other great projects, like the mural, all the other public art that you're going on, the rotating art show out here, and then getting pieces to start a city collection too, and working on things like that. I just think that's so wonderful. I love Councilmember Brandstair's idea about incorporating and working with the sister cities. And then I just wanted to comment that with all that you presented, I love them all. I think they're all fabulous, obviously. But I really like how you show the diversity of the mediums, of the types of artwork that are in there. It's not just all one type of style, one type of theme. You can tell that some people painted it, some people have done it on their computer. I know we've had things where it's been photographs, I believe, just all sorts of stuff. So I just really think that that adds to the diversity of when you're driving around the city, you really can do a tour of utility wrap boxes to see some fabulous art and some really great artists that are up and coming and doing wonderful things too. So I appreciate all you guys do. I think it's fabulous work, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I first saw the Signal box wraps last year, I was really impressed. And then these come out and you nailed it. It's even better, right? This is really cool. I love the mayor's idea about seeing if the artists will partner with us to potentially sell posters at the farmer's market. I think it's a great way to promote the artists and also promote pride in our city. Yeah, and I think a lot of these could translate well to a large mural as well, if and when we get down that path. So, thank you.
Mr. Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nice to meet you guys. And I really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. I would echo everyone's sentiments here. There's been a fruitful conversation and lots of great ideas. So I'm in support of all of them. And yes, great job picking out the wraps. They're all very, very nice.
Thank you. And that brings to mind one other thing. The Fiesta de la Familia, Print Northwest, who is doing the wraps for us, came out and they had a booth and they showcased all of the wraps. And then they had people vote on a fan favorite, and then we had awards. And our student artist won, which was really great.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do have a pop-up market at the farmer's market for artists, so that might be a good time to do that.
Yeah, you could do it and to keep your costs low, you could have them all like on one big bulletin board and then people could order them and then print them instead of print a bunch of stuff up and then hoping to sell them. That way you could, be focused and the artist could sign it. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's a good idea. Whatever way would work, but I think it's a really good way to get enhanced visibility and raise a little bit of money for both the artists and the city.
Perfect.
So,
thank you.
yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Good work. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You just want to talk.
Yeah. He gets the last word.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, well, next we're gonna have our senior activity programs update. Elizabeth Scheid, our recreation coordinator, and Debbie Washburn, our assistant, if she's here. Debbie's not here, is she? There she is, there she is. Very good. Here's the senior scoop, pass it around there.
Oh,
There you go.
sorry, was talking to Ryan, it's his fault.
Yeah, no problem, exactly. Come on up. Welcome.
Okay, so I don't have to sit too close to this mic because I talk loud. So thank you, Mayor and Council, for inviting us. And I'm here to talk about the senior activity programs. But I also have to give a shout out to our seniors who are sitting in the audience. I mean, they've been here for 2 hours to support the program, so we know.
Not even past your bedtime. It's good.
So my name's Elizabeth Scheid, and I think I've met all of you. And I've been working for the city for 19 years. I can tell you how old the park is, the playground at Fort Steilacoom Park, because I helped build it in my first week that I started. So that playground is 19 years old. So, Yana. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the history of the senior center, because we have a couple new council members and not everybody might be familiar with the history. So I'm gonna talk about that. And I'm gonna talk about why do we offer senior programs? What are our goals? And I'm gonna talk about some of our different programs and then open it up to questions. So Brianna, please. Okay, so we've been serving seniors over many years. That photo on the bottom there is from the old senior center. I don't even really know. I don't even know who those people are, but it's from the old senior center. So the senior center started in 1968 over at Clover Park Technical College. So very much like the automotive program or the different programs they have there, you could learn how to work with seniors and that type of work. So that's how that program got started, the senior center over there. Then Clover Park decided that they weren't really going to do that program anymore. It really just composed of some education programs and a adult daycare program. So they decided to end that program. So the city picked up that program and we moved into the Lakewood Community Center. So CBDG, if I can even say it, CDBG funds were used to kind of change the format of the building. So it's kind of funny because like some of our light switches, you have to go like outside of the room to turn the light on. So the original format is different than what it is now, but they changed it up to help fit our needs. So we were there for many, many years, had a lot of great programs. And so the city took over auspice in about 2005. And then we had that thing come along called COVID. I don't know if you're familiar with it. So the senior center, we had to close, temporarily, because that is one of the most vulnerable populations for COVID, but also it is a population that is already isolated and lonely and those kind of things. So they were really affected by COVID. And so right away, we started a phone tree. And so we called a lot of our seniors, checking on them. We had like phone tree leaders and they would call, they had a whole list of people that they would phone each week. We started our walk in the park right away. And it's funny, in talking to some of the other seniors centers, this is, back during the COVID days, they would say, well, we're going to start a walking program when the weather gets nicer. Well, I have to tell you, we have walked in rain, we've walked in all kinds of weather, although we don't do it in snow and ice or high winds, or when it was 105 when we, or 150 when we went through that. So we really made the best of our programs. We even had a Zoom happy hour. We still have those programs. So we're getting ready to, COVID restrictions had lifted a little bit, and we were at the community center and we were starting to unpack and getting ready to open again. And the activity room we had leaking in there again. And so we were told that we needed to leave and we need to leave right then. So we just walked out of the building. And so that was in February 22. So we came over to City Hall and we have lots of programs here. And we also have some programs at Port Steilacoom Park. So you can see kind of the programs that we have here. So Brianna. Oh, and here are some photos just from years past. So I picked up a collection of, several different years. So it's really kind of fun to take a look at some of these things and to see how young people look too. It's kind of fun. Brianna. Okay. Wait. Okay. All right. So what are our goals? Why do we even offer programs for seniors. One of the biggest things is we want to help those older adults or seniors to foster independence so they can be more independent. And that could be different from one person to the next person, how they define their independence. We also want to help them stay in their homes longer. That's something that is very, very important to them. So by offering the programs, and when I talk about independence, it might be that showing up for the walk on the Mondays, that's being independent for somebody. But for another person, it could be coming here and playing mahjong or attending the knitting group. So it's different things for different people. You know, it depends on their abilities and what their needs and wants are. Another thing is avoiding loneliness and isolation. Very important prior to COVID and even critical now. It took the older adults a little bit longer to kind of get back into some of the programs, and that was kind of a trend also with other senior centers. But we've been back in action for quite a while, you know, expanding our programs more and more after COVID. Another thing that is very important is making connections and having fun. For a lot of people, the senior center is their family. They don't have other people, but they have us. So it's important that we make those connections. A couple of recent folks that we've had join our programs, one of the ladies lost her son many years ago, and he was at a young age. And so she suffered from a lot of depression and did not get out of her house at all. And so she's now coming to the senior center and participates in a number of our programs. Another one of our older adults, well, we have this happen quite often where they've lost their spouse. So we have really a natural forming support group for, you know, more common for the women who have lost their spouses. And I mean, it goes without saying that we do have fun in our programs. You can see by some of the pictures. So one of the other things that we do is we connect older adults to services. One of the things we've learned is that we can't be everything to everybody, but we know who does. So if somebody needs a ramp built, or they need, they're looking for in-home care, or they're looking for delivered meals, those kind of things, we really know a lot of the resources out there. So instead of having them call 211 or one of the other numbers, we can connect them to a lot of those resources. Then we also give them some of those numbers too, you know, call some of these numbers first. And if that doesn't work, then, you know, you can call this other number. So we are very good at connecting older adults to services and vice versa. You know, some of those other folks that provide those services connect us to older adults.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Speaking of services, how has the transportation service been? Do they need, do we have to, or can we work with Pierce Transit to provide more pickup service? How are we getting folks who need transportation to City Hall currently?
Public transportation with the bus, you know, right over here, or they also come on the shuttle. And so that's something that we can kind of help them get connected with.
Okay.
It is not always easy to qualify for the shuttle. So sometimes they have to have, I think because there's a fairly high demand, they have to have maybe they have cognitive disabilities that might prevent them from riding like regular public transportation.
Right, I'm thinking we've got this runner
physical
service that's been kicked into gear in certain segments of the service areas. We may need to think about seeing how we can push to get it here in
Yeah.
Lakewood for you. And it's kind of like Uber for local transit. Where they pick people up and take them to certain locations within the service area. So let's think about that. How that
And I
might be
know a couple
helpful.
of our older adults actually use Uber.
Okay, good. Well, that's even better. Yep.
Yeah. Let's see, so connecting older adults to services And then less calls to police and fire. That's really important too, so that they can be available for those critical calls. Brianna, please. So how do we accomplish all these goals? Well, we have all sorts of programs, and I'm not going to talk about every single one, but I'll talk about a few. So we offer services and resources. SHIBA, which is State Health Insurance Benefits Advisors. So instead of having this company or that company, SHIBA comes in, and Joette is fantastic and can help the older adults kind of navigate that system. You know, with the Medicare and Part B or Part D, all those letters. And then we also, at the farmer's market, we see a lot of our older adults. So we help them with SNAP, EBT, and market checks. So if they qualify income-wise, they can get $40 worth of market checks. So that's something else we do. Brianna, okay. And then, so those are just some of the services. We also have, Debbie does a great job with our, say the word.
Alzheimer's Association. I host a group. It's called Adult Children Caring for Parents with Memory Loss. And so we have that group here, both in person and over the phone if they can't make it in person, once a month. And we've been doing that for about 8 years now.
And that's a really unique program because a lot of the support groups out there are typically for spouses. So it's a great way we can serve the older adults by helping out their adult children, and that helps them. Let's see. We also have tax referral services. We used to do it over at the senior center, but we don't have that option anymore. But that's another way that we plug people in because we get a lot of phone calls about that. So we also, oh, can we go back one, please? So we also have art and education programs. Our Dirty Gloves Gardening Club is really fun. We have quite a few people that come to that, and gosh, we just have a really good time. Nobody's really an expert, but you know, a couple of these ladies here come to our garden club, and one of them might be good at tomatoes, one of them might be good at roses, you know, and one of them not in that group. Maybe they're good at weeds. I don't know. We also have our Naughty Knitters. We have Mahjong, and that's quite popular. We have all sorts of things. So those are just a few things I've mentioned. We have, so we also have brain games, and we have our AARP driving class, and we have our book club, just to mention a couple other ones. See, we don't have any fun at Mahjong either, as you can see there. Brianna, please. So we have lots of fun events. We have our drive-through events. We have men's coffee, and that is a great group. We started that many, many years ago because men typically are less social than women, and they don't always want to come to things that, you know, larger group things, but they are often more willing to come like to men's fellowship. And we appreciate, we've had, you can see there that the police chief is there, but we've had the mayor attend, the city manager, and we really appreciate the mayor popped in spontaneously to our coffee and conversation the other day. And I know that the city manager comes to Men's Coffee and they really like him too. You're welcome. I'll tell him you're gonna come back soon. We don't always have guests, and it's not a presenter, it's a guest. They sit down at the table with them and they talk about what they do and answer questions, and they ask a lot of questions, don't they?
It was fun. We just had a very casual question and answer conversation. It was a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. And we don't always have guests because they want to have their men's fellowship time too. So that's really important. And they are funny. They just crack me up. My son happened to be with me one day, so he went to Men's Coffee, and even made him laugh, and he's 19, so he even thought it was pretty cool. Brianna? So we have some fitness, oh, who's that? Who's that up there? So I didn't really know she was gonna be here, so it's not a setup or anything. We have Just a Walk in the Park, and like I said, we started that right after COVID. And we go in all types of weather. We go in the rain, we go in warm weather. And we can have we usually have about 15 people, can have up to 20, so it is very well attended. We've done a barn walk before, and so we'd like to do educational walks. It's a little bit more challenging because it's a little bit harder for them to hear. We even tried one during COVID. It didn't work out very well because we had to stand so far apart that we couldn't really hear. Lesson learned. We also have senior fitness. We have Vanessa who teaches for us too. Brianna. Okay, so how do we engage our older adults? How do we get them to come to our programs? How do they hear about us? Well, one of the big things is through Facebook. So the city has 3 Facebook pages. We have one for the city, one for the police department, and then we have one for the senior center. And actually, the senior center has the highest engagement level, which is quite a compliment because police usually have a really high engagement level because a lot of people like drama, you know? So, and we have better engagement than they do. Now, seniors are one of the larger uses of Facebook, but it has been really worked well for us. When we talk to new folks, often they'll tell us they heard it on Facebook, or they'll say, oh, I just read about it on Facebook yesterday, so I'm coming over to this or that event. We also have our newsletter, and you have one of those. So we mail that out to a lot of folks. We also offer it via email, but a lot of folks like to get it in print because then they can put the calendar on their refrigerator. But this has been a very good marketing tool for us. We also have email lists, and we really started that after COVID. So like with our gardening group or with like some of the art groups, we started email lists with that. And so they're blind email lists, so they don't have everybody's email, but it was a really good way of staying connected. And I will tell you that older adults do know how to use computers, not all of them. And older adults do know how to use smartphones, and they can go on websites, and they know Facebook, and they can do emails. And so a lot of them do use technology. If there's anything that we could be a little bit thankful for with COVID is that it really helped to improve their technical skills. We also go to resource fairs. Debbie and I were just at one, April or May, and it was actually a really good one until the fire alarm went off and we all had to go outside in the rain, but it was still very good. So not only do we reach out to seniors at resource fairs, but we also connect with the other vendors and the other folks that do services for older adults. We see a lot of older adults at our farmers market. A lot of them stop by our booth, and so we keep newsletters there. We also get them on the list either by email or snail mail to get a newsletter. So that's a great way that we connect with older adults there. And then also by networking. Debbie and I attend networking events here and there that are put on by some of our service providers that work with older adults. And so that is a really good way of networking, so we can learn who's who and what they do and what they might be able to provide for our services that we're not able to provide. So what's next? Where are we going? We have looked for an alternative location. We have not been successful in that. A couple things. Well, first of all, nothing's ADA accessible, right? By far. You know, also, a lot of our property that's available in Lakewood is industrial, which means definitely not ADA accessible. No parking because they don't really use parking. I would have never thought about that before, but they only need a few parking spaces because they're just bringing in trucks, right? So limited parking, costly repairs, or the location's not right. Or we've also found too that some agents weren't really, or landlords, I should say, they were looking more for a retailer and not a business like ours. So they really weren't interested. So we're still in the process of looking for a place that we can fit all of our programs in, and is ADA accessible is the big one. We are in the process of cleaning out the senior center right now, which has been so much fun. Because it's 19 years worth of stuff. I mean, we don't have a lot of storage space, so we kept on top of it. But especially without, having too much of a place to put all of our boxes and things like that, we've had to be very specific in what we keep. And a lot of our tables and chairs and stuff, we inherited when we started. Okay, so that was like 19 years ago. So, some of it is a little dated and aged. Some thoughts too are having some of our older adult programs, at the H Barn when that comes about, or maybe at the community space at the park, building a multi-generational community center. These are all just different ideas, or collaborating with the library. There have been talk about that for years. So those are other things that are in the works. Some of the things that Debbie and I are working on for the fall is we're talking about having another resource fair for seniors, because we used to have a pretty big one when we had our other building. We always had a fun theme to it. And like when the Star Wars came out again, we did a big Star Wars theme, and we've had all kinds of themes. We did go to I'm going to tell this funny story. So we did go to a resource fair, and we always decorate our booth and that kind of stuff. And it was a circus theme. So we were going to decorate our table, and we were even going to dress up a little bit. We're so glad we didn't, because we got there and there wasn't one decoration to be found there at all. So we were glad we didn't come in, circus costumes or something. So we're looking at offering a resource fair for our seniors, possibly out at the pavilion. Another thing that Debbie and I have been talking about is doing like a resource evening. And this would be for adult children of their parents that have either memory loss or some other type of care needs, where the parents are caring for the kids are caring for their parents, while sometimes they're also caring for their own children. So having some resources and some presenters. So we're looking at offering that in the fall, and we've been talking a lot about that. We'll be offering some more fee-based programs to help offset expenses too. I think I have one more slide, Brianna. I think that was from the barn walk, because there's lovely Mary there. So does anybody have questions? And I do appreciate you saving the best for last.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about facilities, existing ones we're using. Is the pavilion working well for the fitness programs
The pavilion,
in the park? Yeah.
yeah, sorry, it was echoing a little bit. Yeah, so the pavilion, the park, and City Hall here. So we're actually doing quite a bit here. And I think one thing that's important too, so if we're going to go somewhere else, I want it to be just as nice as or nicer than what we have here. One of the things I really want to avoid is going to another place, then we have to go to another place. That is not that, that doesn't work well for anybody, and it's particularly not going to work well for older adults. So I want to have a solid plan.
Ultimately, one location for the multiple activities, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the most ideal. If we could just find that piece of property in the money tree.
Right, exactly. Any coordination with KWA and their facility?
We did, we actually talked to them quite often. We did go to in fact, we saw you there, to their open house for their lifelong learning program. And they tend to offer some of the same programs that we do. So we have talked about, we always send them the newsletter
Mhm.
and give them information. They give us information and we kind of share what we both do.
Possible coordination.
Mhm.
So that's okay. Well, hopefully the new library, when it is up and running August, September-ish, can have, I think they're gonna have some meeting space that might be able to be something
Yeah.
helpful for you, but
Yeah.
again, it's not the one-stop shop that you're looking for. We still would like to someday provide that, for
Yeah.
sure.
You know, I just want to avoid like taking the bulk of our programs and moving those around.
Right.
You know,
I
if
get
we
that.
have a meeting room or something, that would be definitely doable. One of the things with having the pop-up library here is we have built a really good relationship with the library.
Great.
We have, we already had our book club
Uh-huh.
and there is a, and I cannot remember what it's called. There's a reading program where there's 10 different book ideas, not a
Mhm.
specific book, but categories. And so we have a group of seniors that have participated in that. And last year, whoever read the 10
Right.
choices first got to have lunch with me. We still haven't done it yet, but we do connect with them. We connect our seniors with them.
Mhm.
So that's really been a nice relationship that we've built.
That's great. Well, thank you for all you're doing on that. Questions, Mr. Branstetter?
Yeah, I would echo that. Thank you. I think I can occasionally drop in person at some of these things to do that. And I would mention, the pictures sort of show that, but the events are participated by people with enthusiasm. And they look to do that. And some of that enthusiasm stems from the two of you, and some of it stems from the folks who come and participate, being able to go and do that. But it is unfortunately that the Lakewood Senior Activity Center isn't actually a place anymore. That you're there. And I appreciate your comment about you don't want a temporary place and then another temporary place and another temporary place. It's more the planning program. But we hear from youth, okay, and youth say, we don't have a place. We don't have a youth center of being able to go and do that. And we have the seniors without a center. Now, in some communities, they have a senior center and they have a youth center. In other communities, they have a community center to be able to go and do that. And we have talked on the council about, as we're trying to plan to acquire real estate in the central business district here downtown, that a community center, a multi-generational community center or something would be done. But when I talk to youth about that, they say a multi-generational community center is better than nothing, but not ideal, because they would really like to have a youth center. And I'm wondering if that same particular feeling with the population that you serve, they would certainly go to, if we created a multi-generational center and provided some space in it and then some co-use space with others, or would they prefer that we work towards a space that is truly focused on seniors?
Well, I think,
And maybe I got other folks I can ask.
I think years ago that would not have worked to have a multi-generational as much, but with our older adults, our seniors being more younger now, I think they're more open to that instead of going to someplace that old people go to, if you will. I mean, maybe those aren't the right words, if you understand what I'm saying. So I think that they are more open to having the younger people, the youth there. I think that they mesh better as far as the older adults think. I mean, it would be nice too to have just a senior center, but I think a multi-generational center would work better nowadays than it would have been 10, 15 years ago.
So when you say open to, that's different than would prefer.
Yeah, I think that they would be open to a multi-generational. They would like to come to a place like that. I think it offers them some youthfulness too when they're around younger folks. And I do want to address one other thing too. When you talk about how we don't have a building, the way I like to look at it is that was our shell, okay? But we have the programs, we have the people, we have the participants, we have a lot of the ingredients, but we're missing our shell. So when people say if the center is closed, we don't have a center, that's not necessarily true. I think that's our shell that we had, but we have the beams and the everything.
Thank you.
That was kind of a play on words, wasn't it? Yeah, because we have a beam collapse. I didn't say this, but we have there's a huge beam collapse, and that's why we can't be in that part of the center. The old building, the old shell.
Mayor.
Mr. Boki.
Thank you. I just want to, just some general or technical questions. How have your numbers held up coming out of COVID and then coming into this kind of where you're in multiple locations?
Well, first of all, our numbers were down after COVID, and that was a trend with all the senior centers. I belong to a couple different groups. One of them is a work group with senior centers that get funding by Pierce County. And another group is Washington State Association of Senior Centers. So a big trend was that after COVID, that it took older adults a little while longer to get back into programs. I think, safety was a concern for them with COVID, and then just it took them a little longer to get connected and to feel comfortable going out in public for a lot of different reasons. But our numbers have been really good. Our book club is full. We have great numbers in our walk. So our numbers are really, we have good participation in our men's coffee, our coffee and conversation. I think people really enjoy the program, so they talk about it, and we do a really good job of promoting, and the word of mouth has really helped. Another thing that you'll see a lot of our older adults at our events. You'll see them at the jazz night. You'll see them at Summerfest. You'll see them, lots of them at farmers markets. So we have done a really good job of promoting those as well, and coming full circle with that.
I would note I was busy looking through on my day job. I work for the county, and I was trying to pull up the senior center allocations. And I think within that, there are numbers of participants, but I couldn't find it. So it was educational for me, because when I'm at work, I can pull it through a different system, and I can find, now I'm in the public system, and it just didn't work. So I can't cite numbers, but I believe that the Lakewood Senior Center is one of the busiest, actually. By what do they call unduplicated? It's one of the top 2 or 3 in the county, correct?
Yeah, and I believe so. We have a lot of diversity in our programs, and also the way that we track our programs, we've had to change just a little bit because we go to multiple, we're in multiple locations, like, like with our walk, how do we track that? And how do we keep it all in one place? And how do we meet the requirements from our grant?
Right.
We were talking about that the other day, that usually we know what we need to report on and what our numbers have to be on. But we did get a different ask. I think it was last year. In our half-yearly report, all of a sudden they wanted zip codes for everybody. We're like, well, we have it, but it's in different locations. So now we have it all laid out and have a different tracking system, so we can track all of that, especially what they require.
I've always heard there's like 5 or 6 things you have to do to be considered a real senior center. Because in the county, there's a number of places where they raise their hand and they say we're a senior center, but in fact, the county staff will say they're not a senior center because they don't meet the requirements of a senior center. I am putting you on the spot.
I know what you're
10
talking
o'clock at
about.
night. What are those 4 or 5 things?
Let me think a minute. Okay, so one of them would have to be nutrition services, educational services, referrals and resources. Something about art. I know what they are and I'm almost got it. But you are putting.
I think you did, I think you did great. So how many of them do we do? We do enough.
We,
We
so
don't
I
do
think you have to
nutrition.
do, I think you have to do 3 out of the 5.
3 out
We
of 5,
don't
okay.
do nutritional services, but we do a form of it actually because we offer presentations. We work with the SNAP, EBT and farmers market checks.
Okay.
So we actually qualify in that section now.
Okay, good. So but you're aware of those, that you
Mhm.
have to hit those benchmarks to be able to get continued funding. Okay, good.
Yes, I didn't study hard enough. I didn't know you were gonna ask me that question, but yes, I'm very familiar with that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Did you want to have someone recite the Rotary 4-way test or 5 promises? Anything else, Mr. Boki? Just checking. Mr. Lorcell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a pop quiz for you.
Okay.
I'll be nice.
Perfect.
If I were to drop into a coffee event, should I show up to the men's coffee or the coffee and conversations?
Both.
Okay.
Okay, because the men's coffee and conversation, we really haven't had presenters, so that's something that we might start. But on the other hand, I don't want that to take away from some of that networking, that bonding and that connecting. One of the things that's really good about coffee and conversation or men's coffee, that is usually a time when somebody's thinking about coming to the senior center, but they're a little hesitant and they're not sure. That is a great time to come in because everybody's so friendly and nice and welcoming, and it's really a fellowship time. And the men's coffee, they will drill you.
Sure.
They'll ask you a lot of questions. And yes, won't they? But yeah, but they're super funny. So they're really two different groups. So I would say both.
Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
Should I give you a heads up if I'm gonna stop in or should I just show up?
You can, what would work best for you?
Okay, we'll find out.
Okay.
You know, one of the things is group is, while it isn't there, somebody will bring up something and it will create a theme for the meeting that everybody wants to do, whether it's where they were in the military or some problem they had with their car or something like that, and everybody will have something to contribute around a theme that's there. So you don't really have to prepare anything to go to those. You know, you just got to just sort of join in the conversation.
Yeah, it's very, very casual, and that's the way they like it.
Mr. Boki, did you have anything else? No. Just checking. Okay. Anybody else?
Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you all and thank you ladies for
Thank you
coming.
very much, and I couldn't do it without Debbie. She's my yin to my yang. I'm a little, she's the calm
Yeah.
one. So we are the dream
Appreciate
team.
it.
We really make it work, and
Yeah.
we have wonderful older adults and great
Yeah.
volunteers. And
Well, thank you
so we're
guys
very
for
happy about that.
being part of the program and making it joyous for other people to come and.
And look at this, they
acquaint
stayed out
themselves.
to almost 10 o'clock. They
I
must
know.
like it at the senior
Exactly.
center.
Yeah. Stay around 2 more hours and you'll be with us still.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Good job. All right. That appears to be the last item for conversation tonight. Of course, next June 17, during the regular city council meeting, we're going to have a review of the automated traffic safety camera systems. I don't think Mr. Caulfield is going to address that tonight, but the rest of the floor is yours for reports by the city manager.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. Few updates. You might recall last week during public comment, the executive director and the events planner from the Buffalo Soldiers Museum came, requesting funding again this year for their Labor Day event. Maybe perhaps that's something that you could take up under council comments if that's something that you wanted to fund again in 2024. Just as a bit of background, last year, the city council funded with its ARPA funds $2,500. And what you get for that is you get sponsorship and then 25 tickets to a special sponsorship box for the softball game. We did not come close to utilizing the 25 tickets. The other option is you could fund it at $1,000. And again, you get the recognition as a sponsor. However, you get 10 tickets, and that might be a little bit more feasible to try and utilize those 10 tickets as opposed to 25. And then also, if you wanted to utilize some of your ARPA funds, that's an option, or we could just pick it up as part of a budget adjustment later on at the end of the year when we close out 2024. So, but Mayor, just wanted to leave that with you as a follow-up to that group. I'd also add that, the museum are very actively engaged on both sides of the wire as it relates to the military, our veterans and their families. So they do great work, not just in Lakewood, but in our region as a whole. You probably are all aware now there was a major fire that kicked off late last night over at what's called the Watson Event Center in the 115,000 block of Bridgeport. The building looks like to be a complete loss. West Pierce Fire and Rescue and our own police department did an outstanding job in terms of the response and actually keeping the fire contained, but also doing some evacuation of both businesses and residents. They did have to shut down Bridgeport both ways, just given the size and the intensity of the fire as they battled it, and they had to call out other fire departments to help them, but they were able to get it all squared away, and actually they ended up opening Bridgeport much earlier in the afternoon than that they had anticipated. So the cause of the fire is now under investigation. And I know the fire marshal was out there and will continue to be out there. And then our own building official went out just to talk with the property owner about what they needed to do to secure the facility. But it looks like it is a complete loss. Just wanted to give you a quick update on our sister city visit. So Kim Hay and their representatives, looks like about 5+ individuals are going to be coming. And they're actually going to be staying a little bit longer than we originally anticipated. So they'll be coming in probably late on Wednesday, July 17th, and then staying through Tuesday, July 23rd. Really, the kickoff event will be on the 18th, which is a Thursday, with a luncheon event over at the Country Club. To kind of get things rolling. Some of the things that they're interested in seeing is really on the business logistics side. So we're looking to get them a tour and an overview of the Port of Tacoma, as well as some briefings from JBLM and perhaps a tour of one of the Boeing facilities, perhaps even just the 737 plant and some other options and opportunities, as well as just some, good tours here in Lakewood as well. So more to follow on the itinerary of that event. And of course, they will be our guest of honor at the Summerfest event on Saturday, July 20th. So that'll be their full day on that day. But there will be plenty of time for the mayor and the council to be, and the deputy mayor to be able to interact and engage with them. Wanted to give you a maybe not so quick public defense update. Last week the council, we increased the contract for public defense services. Probably more to come there in terms of allocating more resources for public defense as we look out to 2025 and beyond. And first, just want to say that this is the result of the changes of the number of cases that public defenders are going to be allowed to handle. And this is being generated by the Washington State Supreme Court. The good news is that they are going to be providing an opportunity for public comment as it relates to the changes that they're making, which I'll get to here in a second. And Association of Washington Cities is going to be very actively engaged in that. As a matter of fact, AWC sent a letter to the Supreme Court just expressing concerns about the recommended changes as it relates to public defense or indigent defense. And, AWC would like to, representing cities, and I know counties are also doing this as well, like to work collaboratively, not just with the court, but our state legislators before anything goes into effect, because it is going to have a real sizable impact on municipalities' finances. And as you know, we are limited in terms of what we can fund. But just to give you kind of a size of the issue, by this time next year, July 2025, what they're recommending is that misdemeanor caseloads, and again, we essentially run a traffic court, misdemeanor court, caseload standards would be reduced from the 400 cases per year that a public defender is allowed to have to 280 cases a year. So basically, on top of that, there's going to be a 70% demand for more public defenders, and attorneys and public defenders are not, it's not a growth industry. There's not a lot of folks out there that want to be public defenders. We have a very difficult time finding, for example, conflict defenders when our primary public defender, just can't, handle a case, and we end up paying a significant premium to be able to go out and find that. So it's kind of going to go bad from worse. But then a year from then, on July of 2026, the standard caseloads will be reduced from 280 to 225, and then by 2027, it'll go to 200 cases per year. So it'll be essentially cut in half over the next 2 years or so. So right now, we're paying upwards of $600,000 a year. We can expect that to at least double as we look out. That's even presuming that our public defense firm can even find public defenders. So hence, that's why AWC and cities are taking such a proactive approach and trying to engage with the Supreme Court to focus on perhaps some of the unintended consequences that are going to happen here. Because, how does this all play out on, the front line in terms of the delivery of those services? We've been talking with AWC, and we have highly encouraged AWC to make this a real key priority. Not just in terms of the number of cases, and if the Supreme Court does go down the road here where that's going to be the new standard, then our state legislature needs to step up and provide us the funding to help us with this. Because right now, the amount of funding that they do provide, and they do provide some limited grant funds to jurisdictions. We get about $20,000 or $25,000 a year. But it needs to be much, much more to help buy down the cost of these new mandates that are coming our way. And again, that's even presuming that the public defenders are going to be available to handle even the cases. So again, just wanted to plant that seed with you. It is likely that this will be recommended as a key legislative priority for this body as you look out into 2025 as well. SHAPE, the South Sound Affordability Housing Partner, their executive board adopted a resolution, I think it was last week, setting the 2025 budget, and that's pursuant, and then they have sent that over to us. That is pursuant to the signed interlocal agreement that we and a number of other cities in the county have that forms SHAPE. The 2025 budget is actually flat for Lakewood. It remains at $22,407. However, it is projected to increase in 2026 to over $27,000 and then upwards as they look out 3, 4, 5 years beyond that. In 2025, they are increasing services. They are increasing, it appears, their program specialist from a half-time position to a full-time position. So then there'll be 2 full-time positions. There'll be a director and this program specialist, because right now there's 1.5 FTEs. So this will bring it up to 2. And you might ask, well, why is our rate staying flat? That's because they're buying down that cost with some existing fund balance to the tune of $50,000. But then beginning in 2026, we will see a sizable increase, and of course, working out on that. According to the interlocal agreement, now that we have received this, you as a body have two choices on how to either approve or not approve this. In the past, what we have done is it's been incorporated into the budget, your budget. And this needs to be done by December of this year. And so long as that it's proposed in the budget and it's adopted, then you're good to go. And at this point in time, I do plan on recommending this funding level for both 25 and 26, but really the focus is 25. And so they need to know by their December 6th executive board meeting whether we're in or not. And typically your budget is adopted by the end of November. So unless you wanted to take separate standalone action, I don't see a reason for that. It will be included in the proposed 25-26 budget. So just again, wanted to give you an update on that from a situational awareness standpoint. And I want to make sure I didn't have anything else here. I know last week on Tuesday it was a little cloudy, it was a little rainy. However, the farmers market did kick off. They didn't have too many vendors that canceled. So that's up and going. And so tomorrow, of course, will be week 2. Over time, it just gets better and better and better. Also later this week on June 12th, which is Wednesday, I know Councilmember Branstetter will be providing a welcome to the property tax exemption seminar that's being provided for low-income seniors and people with disability and how they can take advantage of the property tax exemptions that the Pierce County Assessor's Treasurers provides. And that's being done in partnership with SHAPE as well. So looking forward to that event. And then this coming Saturday will be the Juneteenth event, which will be from 3 to 5 p.m. That'll be right here in City Hall. And again, that's a partnership with the St. Joseph, St. John Episcopal Church. That's right here in Lakewood. The following week, June 18th to the 21st, I know several of us are going to be attending the AWC conference down in Vancouver. And then that same week, our summer concerts will kick off on Tuesday, June 18th is the first one. And so that kind of takes us out to the end of the month. So that's kind of what I got. I think I have everything. I think I got everything that I wanted to say. So with that, Mayor, that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Well, before we turn to council comments, and let's chat about the Buffalo Soldier opportunity to sponsor. As the manager indicated, we did use ARPA funds last year at the $2,500 level. I'm open to suggestion, but we want to try to give some consensus tonight, either at that level or 1,000. Ms. Bell?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say that I went last year with my family and we really liked it. You could walk around, do the vendors that were down there, of course, watch the game. I would encourage everybody to go. And I just really think, I think that we did it at the $2,500 level last year. I think if we take advantage of what they are giving us, I would be for keeping it at the same level.
And the flyer doesn't have a date on it that I can see for the event. Oh, Labor Day Festival, okay. Okay, so it's in September then. Mr. Branstetter?
Yeah, I agree. I think that $2,500 and we find it to do that. I think we can do a little bit better this year and making sure that more of the tickets are used, okay, to be able to go and do that. I think we're not aggressive in terms of promoting that or providing it to do that. I don't know. We can, maybe the senior center could make it a field trip. I don't know how that goes, but this is a group that comes and participates in a lot of things around Lakewood to do that, and I think they're deserving of our support.
Great. Looks like we've got head nods all around. And then, dumb question on my part, but who's playing the softball game? Is it Air Force, Army kind of people?
Yeah, it's military veterans.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah. So would you like to play, Mayor? We can try and maybe get you in there.
Yeah, I'll play left out.
Yeah.
So Mayor,
2,500.
so we can bring this forward, as part of your consent agenda. I don't know if we can be ready next week, we can do it,
Yeah,
or we
well-
can do it on July 1st.
Why don't we use ARPA funds?
And that's what I was gonna ask you. Do you wanna, okay, all
I
right,
think so, yeah.
okay.
Very
Thank-
good. All right,
Thank you.
let's then start off with Mr. Boki.
Good planning commission meeting last week. They went through the comprehensive plan. They actually had a public comment period and it was pretty good. It was actually pretty well attended by different folks from around the city expressing some of their, frustrations in some cases. And some really good comments by the public, and that's going to continue this week. So they have another planning commission meeting this Wednesday. So again, I think they're going to have 3 this month. They had to move some things around. There's a reason for that. They're also going to look at some new shorelines recommendations for setbacks that are a little bit more aggressive than what we've had in the past. So and I haven't really taken a look at the packet yet, but it's in there for this week. So it'll be interesting to see what the impacts of that will be. They're just different recommendations that I believe came from the state. So with that, I think that's all for me.
Mr. Lorcella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really like tonight's meeting. I think it flows into a good story. So like talking diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We had a diversity of artists' backgrounds and mediums and that sort of thing. We had equity conversation connecting to accessibility of our public resources, our lakes, our parks, City Hall. Talked inclusion, so listening and engaging with our seniors in the senior center, valuing their legacy and honoring what they can provide to our community. And then belonging is by doing all those above, everyone feels like they're part of the bigger picture. So I think it all flowed really well. With that, last week I went to the Public Safety Advisory Council and they reviewed the survey results that we had reviewed back in March and had good conversation there. Mr. Vargas presented and was well received. We also discussed the drop in crime rate that the police chief came and presented to us a couple weeks ago as well. I wasn't able to attend the farmer's market last week. I got stuck with a blown tire on the freeway, so that waylaid me a little bit. But I am looking forward to going tomorrow, as well as attending the Tillicum Woodbrook Neighborhood Association meeting, which I thought was last week, but I was also incorrect there. So I just need to pay better attention to my calendar. And finally, on Friday and Saturday, my nonprofit hosted a garage sale to raise funds for pediatric cancer patient support, and we did really well. We made over $10,000.
Wow,
So pretty
fantastic.
good for a garage sale.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Not bad.
yeah. So it was a good weekend, and that's all I got. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo that they were fantastic presentations tonight. Between everything, PRAB, the DEIB, the Arts Commission, Senior Center, just all of it, it just filled us in lots of those little gaps, and it's great to learn more about what we are doing and what we're offering here in Lakewood. And I am looking forward to hearing more about the DEIB and being more participatory and with that. So, and I'm also on Saturday, I am looking forward to the Juneteenth event. So I think that will be a really cool event. And I know it's the second one that they've done. So very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week was lots of graduations. I was unable to attend them as I was fulfilling obligations in my house, but my household was well represented at the graduations. Alyssa went to all of them and spent 10 hours at the Tacoma Dome through 3 graduations. So yeah, she had a good time with graduations. I'll be out on June 24th. I won't be able to attend the meeting. And then I need to kind of wrap up the details, but I'm going to be doing a ride along this Friday. So my second one of the year. I want to kind of do 3 or 4 a year and rotate around, see. But yeah, the last time I went out, it was great. So I'm hoping to maybe do a little something different this time and yeah, see what's going on. I went to the Clover Park meeting tonight and kind of updated them on some city stuff. And there was a few questions and lots of head nodding about, you know, traffic related issues and those sorts of things going along around the city. They seem very supportive of that work and, you know, getting safe routes to schools but obviously, as everyone, you know, it's not pretty while it's happening. So, and then yeah, as I mentioned earlier, you know, one of the items on the agenda was I think that they needed to bring it up at a study session, was to talk about the Lake City property. And I just encourage us to be open and supportive and willing to reach out a hand and, you know, see what we can do to make that happen. I think it would be really just a phenomenal improvement in that area that really, when you look at the aerial in that area, there's no green grass. You know, if you're looking in the summertime, there's a big field full of, you know, dead weeds and stuff there. So, but it's like 9 or 10 acres. And, you know, if we could work with them to do something, that would really be transformative. So, yep. And that's it. Thank you.
Probably get lots of support for that for sure. Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am, again, as the city manager mentioned, I'm going to be attending the AWC conference next week in Vancouver. I'm looking forward to attending the Juneteenth event here on Saturday, and I think that it's significant that the event is now moved from where it was last year in the church that was doing it to being a more public event and being held here at the City Hall, that I'm hoping may well set a precedent for us to be able to go ahead and do that. But that's all I have.
Great, thank you. And just so you know, I will not be able to attend the Juneteenth celebration here. I'm heading out late Friday on a family vacation, so I'll be missing the next 2 weeks. The deputy mayor hopefully will be able to fill in. If she has some additional health challenges, then by council rules, one of you will have to select someone to chair the meeting on that. So just kind of be forewarned on that. The agendas are not too onerous on the next 2 meetings. We got the study session on the 17th and then a fairly light agenda, I think, on the 24th. I may zoom in on either one or both, but there you have it. So just be prepared on that. In terms of other meetings, there's no PCRC meeting this Thursday. That's been canceled for the summer, so that's off for the month of June. I just got notice, I just sent to the city manager on the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, gave me a congratulatory letter that I forwarded to the city manager about our CDBG block grant for fiscal year 24, $533,000, which is great. We're also advised we've got $1.9 million in available Section 108 borrowing authority based on that CDBG allocation. So I don't know what Mr. Gum may have in store for us, but it might be interesting to see how those funds can be put to good use, like we've done in the past. But that's kind of a good notice to get. I want to concur with the meetings tonight and the presentations. I thought everything was just really well done. Really appreciate the DEIB work that has been done, and certainly the PRAB work that has led to the significant legacy work on our parks and recreation facilities. So thanks for that, as well as the senior center and utility box wrap art update. So good comments by all. I think that went really well. In terms of public comment and things that I've been receiving, I had a number of neighbors contact me about the Interlochen Bridge. many of whom wanted to have a conversation about the options for down the road, maybe closure, down the road, maybe one way. So people came over and I had them over in the backyard, and it was just great to meet people I had not met who live down the road. Some of them are new to the community, some of them are not as new, but they all have a heart in kind of promoting a conversation. So I encourage them to get together with other of their neighbors. I'm happy to have them over, we can chat, but they ultimately will want to provide some feedback to all of us about what their hopes and dreams are for that area of the city. So it's always fun to meet new people. And then, of course, maybe like you've received a public comment, whether by phone call or email, on one of the potential items on our July 1 agenda, which is the Gravity Lake property purchase. So you probably saw some responses. I'm trying to be somewhat responsive and giving generic information about it, but it's certainly one that we can expect to receive more formalized comment on in the next few weeks. So I hope I didn't overstep my bounds. I don't speak on behalf of the council, but I was giving them at least some response because people want to have some information. There was to be a community meeting last night by the Gravity Lake Homeowners Association, and they deferred that meeting to get additional information. I don't know whether from city staff or us directly. I have not heard or received any information requests, but it may be, I'll talk to the city manager about it, but it may be helpful to provide some basic information to the HOA president so they can have a qualitative conversation without running down a path of innuendo and rumor, because that doesn't help anyone. So more to follow on that. Other than that, again, I will be out for the next 2 weeks on this, but I'll be zooming in if need be. Any other comments, questions for the good of the order? Seeing none, we're adjourned.